A man discovers his wife's affair, leading to a dramatic confrontation and a meticulously planned act of vengeance. It had been 6 weeks since D-Day. John suffered a mental collapse. I've also advised him about the measures to reconciliation, one of which includes no communication with the affair partner for wayward wives. Male, 44, and female, 34, and her companion is a co-worker, female 26. We have been married for 14 years. My erratic spouse advises that I do some internal work for giving affair partner so much power over my life that I suffered a breakdown. This is despite my insistence on this. This is a co-worker who knows me, I've socialized with her, and helped her acquire a job at the company. If her partner was aware that he was married, affair partner felt safe sleeping in the marital bed and visiting the marital home when her spouse offered her a partner credit card or present. I questioned them separately about the excessive flirtation, and they both insisted that nothing was going on. The scheduled dates coincided with my birthday when I had to be in the hospital with a dying relative. He stated that your feelings, frailty, and being broken by a random girl should be your main concern. Also, I need to conduct some internal work. Now am I going crazy? This isn't some random girl with whom wayward spouses have stopped communication and we'll never see again. It's the small co-worker who knew me and socialized with me while breaking the rules of friendship. This is what hurts the most. So can someone tell me whether I'm overreacting? Affair partner wishes to apologize if her partner has reached out to explain herself and apologize. A few weeks ago, I would have done anything for this kind of closure, but now I've achieved my own point of closure without launching any attacks on a straying husband or affair partner because I was so preoccupied with myself. I didn't want to let this problem consume any more of my time. Her acts offend me, and I don't want to think such individuals exist. So I don't think an apology will help me get any closer to closure. As anyone accepting an apology from their affair partner, did it help your recovery? It seems cliché, but I focus on myself by reconnecting with myself. I realized I was so preoccupied with supporting my erratic husband that I had neglected to focus on the things that made me happy. A month of everyday family and community activities helped my rehabilitation process. The more individuals you meet, the more you realize that you don't have to tolerate this conduct. My self-esteem had plummeted in recent months, and since my mother died a few years ago, no one has been really supportive of me. So when a top worldwide firm approached me for a position and provided me an external boost, I realized that even if my existing managers or wayward husband did not notice my shipments, others did. I'm not sure what the perfect name is for those who thrive on attention in secrecy, but intuition tells me that now that the affair is out in the open, I don't care and I'm more concerned with myself than whether their partner wants to draw me back. She recognized me, she knew we were married, yet went ahead with it for months. It sounds like your husband has a PhD in blame shifting with a minor in gaslighting techniques. Who thought letting someone frolic in your marital bed and steal your credit card was a sign of internal weakness? Was that chapter left out of the marriage handbook? But hey, at least your husband is capable of creative problem solving instead of dealing with his own infidelity. He has opted to diagnose you, allowing a fair partner to exercise excessive authority. Talk about avoiding responsibility like a pro. And as for the affair partner's sudden desire to apologize, please pardon me if I'm not busting out the champagne just yet. It's like someone putting your house on fire and then offering you a bucket of water. It's too little, too late. Update on a previous partner's apology in karma. I believe it's been 3 months since D-Day when my world fell apart, but boy, does it feel lighter for longer. A third partner came out and offered to apologize, but she declined. She still found a way to write me a letter in it. She says that she purposefully targeted a wayward husband who was her mentor for fun and to demonstrate that she could kidnap a man, to give you an indication of the level of intent. I am well known in my industry, therefore, my birthday is public. She had pestered him, even using business emails to establish the first day of my birthday. I was outraged by the malice and the fact that individuals like this exist. Funny enough, within 2 weeks of that initial encounter, our husband was sacked from his executive position, and their companion was also sacked from her management role. A few weeks later, our spouse finally saw the light after he was fired. It turns out that being so distracted can cost you your job. When you make a mistake, you lose your job and your colleagues' respect. As a result, his self-esteem suffered. My spouse then attempted to persuade me that her partner was distraught because her job meant everything to her and she was supporting her family. Ironically, considering her actions that jeopardized her job, I'm shocked he still tried to make me sympathize with her loss when I have a life sentence for this suffering and it does not consent to a third partner working in the poorest part of town. Senior positions are difficult to obtain when your present employer fired you for unethical reasons. She was given a 3-hour daily commute, half a wage, an entry-level post, and was barred from managerial roles for 5 years. They both lost their homes and are experiencing health issues. The weird thing is that I was so embarrassed by the affair that I never told anyone. I had told his family that we were married, and he strangled me and became aggressive, but they did nothing to hold him responsible. I'll never forget feeling lonely and wishing my own parents were still alive to protect me. So losing their jobs, houses, and riches was entirely their own fault. So those in the depths of hell, know that you are far more robust than you. Collect evidence, disclose the affair, and heal. One day you'll come out of this much brighter. I send you all love, strength, and hope. Now, a quick reaction from the community before we move on. Locker goes first. She wants to appear remorseful, she is not. She is basically apologizing for the show, despite knowing what she was doing. She dropped her underwear for a married man. She does not deserve your time. Someone else joins in. It is more than that. It's most likely a power trip intended to assert authority over the OP. It's a complete dick move. Talk about a masterclass in self-sabotage, purposely targeting your mentor for a little fun and then ending up in the worst area of town with a 3-hour commute. That's like going from a penthouse to the ground faster than you can say professional suicide. And as for your spouse, he has finally seen the light. There's nothing like a good old-fashioned fire to bring a wandering eye back to reality. As the saying goes, when life delivers you lemons, it's generally because you've been squeezing oranges behind your spouse's back. But at the very least, you are emerging from the ashes stronger than ever. It's like watching a phoenix emerge from the flames. Instead of fiery feathers, you have a strong backbone and a resilient heart. So here is to you, taking back control and demonstrating to those two clowns that karma has a nasty sense of humor. Cheers to brighter days ahead. How about you? Have you ever accepted an apology from your affair partner? Next up, who knew that OPI's wife's painting class would serve as a canvas for infidelity? Why I'm going to leave my wife of 10 years. Hello folks, I just wanted to share my male 41 tale, which led to my separation from my wife female 35, 4 weeks ago. I don't think I need any guidance now that I've quit trying to comprehend her conduct. Still, I thought I'd share, perhaps someone out there can take something from it. We were together for 14 years, married 10, and have 4 children. The romance appeared to flow so smoothly, at times it appeared and possibly was too good to be true. There were no screaming matches, even after admitting to cheating, an equal share of childcare, domestic chores, numerous date nights, and so on. I was living my dream and couldn't believe how good my life was. I couldn't attend New Year's because I was sick. A freight train hit me sideways. My wife slept with a man from her art course and immediately confessed her feelings as they had been texting for quite some time. I never expected or saw this happening. I can't convey how shocked I was. Soon after, hysterical bonding occurred, followed by a belief that this would be the beginning of a stronger relationship than ever before. The following weeks revealed that A, I took almost all of the initiative to repair the relationship, and B, she never expressed genuine regret. She had difficulty selecting a week of agonizing sadness. I had a lot of ideas to relieve her stress about child and household issues. I always thought we had a great relationship that was sometimes strained by our responsibilities with the kids, but never this way. After a few weeks of focusing on saving the marriage, I wasn't sure if I could forgive the incident in the long run and communicated my boundaries with the affair partner and infidelity in general. This brings us to the last straw. Everything came crashing down after she paid him another visit. She immediately confessed, Crying again, she described how she struggled to resist the desire to revisit her affair but was unable to do so. A significant sting of grief, but also a sense of relief on that particular day. The question I had been thinking about for months had answered itself. I separated, and thankfully it appeared that we had reached an agreement on how the divorce and child custody arrangements would proceed. This week, she has been alternating between being distant and crying, telling me that divorce is a mistake, and forcing me to cuddle her in bed, claiming that she is mentally unstable and that there can be no reconciliation. She also, for the first time, apologized for her behavior. Despite the fact that I wish to hear such things, I just know deep down that I have to soldier on. I will not cancel my plans to get my own place, move out, and move on. The grief that remains is also heavily focused on the fact that I will no longer see my children on a daily basis, and the only life plan I ever had has been shattered. I'll probably never know what happened to her. She couldn't quite articulate what was bothering her about her marriage. I believe she lost interest in me at some point and never communicated with me again. She described her new guy as unsuitable for a relationship, not that I should care anymore. As a crutch to elicit some temporary positive emotions during this time, this icy cold approach is quite unusual. As I'm looking for a place to live, I'm reminded of the version of her I knew back then. She is still visiting the guy. I am relieved. This doesn't bother me too much at the moment. I hope everything goes well for our children, as she has shown signs of being severely overwhelmed with childcare over the last month, ordering for street burnout despite my efforts to pick up the slack. She declined my offer to reduce my work hours and take care of the kids while she transitioned to full-time. Her partying habits changed as well. She always enjoyed attending parties and having fun, however, in recent months, drinking until blackout has become more common on weekends. I hope my departure does not trigger a downward spiral that affects our children in any way. Something serious changed in this woman somewhere along the years. I stupidly categorized as good years, and like I already mentioned, I will from now on try to stop analyzing her behavior. Let's get a couple of community comments. First off, one thing to remember, even though she is the mother of your children, do not set yourself on fire to keep her warm. She can't handle childcare, too bad her car broke down, too bad she is burnt out on her days with the kids. Forget her, you only worry about your time unless it's an emergency. Only communicate with a family app. You're not doing this to punish her, you're doing it so you don't punish yourself. You're no longer her husband, let's face it. This was an exit affair, she had an affair so you would be the one to end it. The OP replies, it's too funny that her car broke down was one of the instances in the past months where I suddenly became important to her again. Also, the people I spoke to couldn't comprehend was that I was bending backwards to give her time to pursue going to parties and keeping up her social life with her girlfriends, also tending to the children while she slept hungover, and her still being unsatisfied. I can't understand it. Another community member adds, no more second or third chances. With your money, to a separate account, gather as much proof as you can. Get her to admit it while you were recording her on your phone. Save your evidence to see 3 to 4 of the best lawyers in your area. Listen to your lawyer. Tell old friends and family what she did so she doesn't tell everyone with a bad person. The OP replies, thankfully, up until now, splitting assets shouldn't be a problem as we both do not possess a substantial amount of assets. Still, I already lawyered up and got warned about possible sudden changes in behavior with these kinds of wives. You're right about the storytelling. Her parents and brother know the full story and can't comprehend it either. Looks like we've got ourselves a front row seat to the What the Hell Happened show starring your wife, featuring a special guest appearance with her midlife crisis. I mean, who knew marriage could turn into a game of musical chairs with feelings for kids, 14 years, and suddenly she's out here doing the relationship CHA with some guy from her art class. And let's not forget the Oscar-worthy performance of I'm Sorry, but I just couldn't resist visiting my fair partner again, a classic move in the playbook of infidelity, right up there with It's Not You, It's Me, and I Promise I'll Change. But hey, at least you're not sticking around for the encore, moving out, moving on, and leaving her to figure out her own mess. Now that's what I call taking back control of your life. Update: I didn't think I would update my post this soon. However, another significant event has shattered my world. To make it short, I found out on Saturday that my at times best friend of 16 years, which I co-founded our beer league hockey team with, is already aggressively trying to flirt by text with my soon-to-be ex-wife. I know we're separated, but this has a backstory. As my soon-to-be ex-wife reported him to me because of inappropriate flirty messages several years ago already. Back then, after a big fight, he apologized profusely, and we made up in the end. Still, a bad feeling always lingered in the back of my mind. Also, the separation is really fresh, and when confronted with the newest incident, he lied to my face about it. Afterwards, he pointed out that everything is just for fun and that nothing physical ever happened. I'm neither convinced nor eager to put up with his kind of fun. So, in short, I shall give up my dearest interest of many years till I'm finding another team or a new hobby altogether, as well as a lengthy relationship. This sucks so much. I can't believe a double whammy like this is happening in such a short space. I also can't understand what I've done to them that causes them to purposefully hurt me like that and kicking me when I'm down. I probably will have to work on my personality to not enable people like this in my future life. My soon-to-be ex-wife, by the way, played along with him and didn't do anything to stop it, therefore reassuring him. My decision to divorce and maintain course, as far as she is concerned, follows several days of wobbly conduct between visiting a pair partner, but also crying and attempting to persuade me to not divorce. She seems to prosper with a decent partner. She seemed incredibly upbeat and happy, but thankfully not the irritating, push-it-in-your-face kind of way. I guess she doesn't care anymore, and that's fine, as I shouldn't either. I now have to somehow cognitively comprehend two earth-shattering shocks in the period of 1 month. I haven't been crying since the recent one, but experienced a momentary feeling of surreality. I feel numb, and my life doesn't seem genuine at this time, as if I were wandering through a dream or nightmare. Very odd, but not as traumatic as the first days with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Here's to picking up the pieces and surviving once more. Edit: I was eventually able to move out on June. Until then, more couch surfing with friends and relatives. I believe that permanent physical separation will come in quite helpful now for some community feedback. I believe you are paying up. My ex had an exit affair with a guy from her auto club around 18 months ago, so I didn't lose her to a friend like you, but what truly sucked was that all of her pals agreed with her. They pretended to host her for girls' day out events while she was actually at his house. After the divorce, he ghosted me, and now my children tell me that the affair partner has blended himself into my life as if I never existed. In my worst moments, I feel as if I was photoshopped out of existence because I no longer have contact with any of those friends. However, I learned the hard way that they were never my pals. It causes you to question reality at times. I devote a lot more time to the gym, eat well during therapy, and keep grinding. Who needs enemies when you have such good friends, right? It's as if they lit the bro code on fire with a flamethrower just for fun, but hey, at least you have a move date on the calendar. Right? Nothing says fresh start like a new zip code and a couch to crash on at a friend's house. So here's to you, getting through the murky waters of divorce, trauma like a pro. Keep going to the gym, eating your greens, and reminding yourself that reality may be weirder than fantasy, but at the very least, you are the hero in your own story. Cheers to picking up the pieces and overcoming the twin whammy of friendship and fidelity failures. You've got it. Here is the next story. I inspected the aged tree. If I made even a minor mistake in my cut, it may veer off into an undesirable region, generating a lot of problems. Although I was hesitant to chop it down, the previous storm and many lightning strikes forced me to move quickly. Yes, you heard it correctly, strikes, not only one. Anyone who says that lightning never strikes the same location twice plainly knows very little about lightning. This tree was most likely the oldest, as well as the tallest and largest in the area, before being struck by lightning for the third time. It stood about 180 feet tall. You might be wondering how I know all this. I clipped the top last weekend, and the upper portion measured 43 feet after the cut. The middle section was little more than 42 feet long, and I measured the remaining section immediately after removing it to ensure it did not reach the neighbor's house, just in case the pressure reached its height today. If you haven't figured it out yet, I am a logger, so I used to be. I now handle logging operations and timber Alex's. We have lived in this old house for a long time. When we initially came home, there were just two neighbors, Josh next door, who had retired before we arrived, and old lady Fraser down the hill. She'd been here for an extremely long time. About 10 years had passed, and a whole new neighborhood had sprung up around us. Most of the reasons we relocated here have vanished. Many trees had been cut down to create way for roads, driveways, and homes. In my opinion, it appeared lifeless and lacked its inherent appeal. In order to obtain the permit to take down the tree, local officials decided to impose stringent time constraints. They limited the amount of time any part of the tree could remain standing and provided a brief window for cleanup after each section was down. Once I cut down the last section of the tree, I'd only have approximately 3 days to chop it into firewood and clear it away, as planned. The remaining portion of the tree stood around 80 feet tall, with a trunk base about 10 feet in diameter. It had a top diameter of just under 6 feet, so I knew I had my job cut out for me. Converting it all into firewood would be a daunting chore requiring long days of labor. The entire process of taking down this tree became a spectacle, as some tree huggers attempted to prevent anyone from doing so. They said that the tree may still survive, and with proper care, could live another 200 years. The dispute was taken to court, and the judge determined that the tree was really dead. Foresters from an independent party investigated the tree and the lightning strikes, verifying that the sap had dried up, killing the tree. Although the branches had not yet caught on, they will in the fall. Josh, old lady Fraser, and the judge benefited from this because I provided them with firewood. We had already filled Josh's woodshed with the top and middle parts, and today's cut would totally fill Fraser's shed, with possibly enough left over for a couple more quarts to stack outside each of their sheds as well. I was reviewing the entire project and deciding where to cut when Josh came over with his camcorder, which is officially a camcorder, but I still refer to them as movie cameras. Old habits die hard, hey neighbor. Mind if I record what's happening? Nope, actually, if that's okay, I'd like a copy of it once we're completed. Sure thing, want me to film your entire home while I'm at it? Do you think you can capture everything, including the falling tree? Not an issue, it'll be my delight to assist you, buddy. You've been a great neighbor all these years, I'll miss you when you move on. When discussing topics, Josh always considered the years ahead. He had a propensity of gazing far into the future. Some folks didn't realize this about him and gave him weird stares. He seemed to view hours, days, weeks, and months as if they were seconds at times. We will not be moving anytime soon, Josh. We've already talked about it. A lot. Yes, we certainly have. This is a shame, it's a great shame. He looked across the front yard. We were standing at his front desk, where I had gone during my drop zone inspections. Yeah, not too much. I said things are born, they grow up, then die. It's all part of the natural process. However, some things appear to perish earlier than expected. Yes, nature occasionally does its own thing, regardless of what anyone thinks. That is for sure. Old lady Fraser, the judge, and I are looking forward to filling our 2 woodsheds with the wood from this tree and the old yellow cedar you cut down for me. I'll have enough for a few years of heating now. I really appreciate it. Not an issue, I needed to do something with the wood. I won't be able to use everything myself, not now anyway. So you're all set now? Are you going through with it completely? Yes, pretty much. I figured the folks at City Hall would be surprised to see it down today rather than this weekend. They say a storm is coming on Friday. I cannot risk leaving that tree up in a windstorm. You know the news crew will be here any moment, right? Yeah, that's another reason I chose to do it today. If we wait until the weekend, people will be protesting or simply watching and drinking. I just hope I don't disturb anyone while cutting it down. That would be a huge shame. I have too much to do and not enough time to complete it all. I believe you will be able to manage. So do you still want me to call those people right after you've cut it down? Yeah, call the lawyer first, then marry approximately 20 minutes later. All right. I hope you understand what you are doing, Charlie. If things go as planned, Mary may have a head start in getting here. I've thought about this several times before, do you know that? Not quite like how things are today. I would say a tree is a tree, Josh. He gave me a serious look before smiling. He shook his head and walked away, entering his house. He called over his shoulder as he reached the stairs to his deck, "Give me about 10 minutes to set up the camera upstairs, and then get it done." "We'll do." Josh, I walked over to my pickup truck and grabbed my Johnson chainsaw with a 42-inch bar. It was a beast and I hadn't used it in a long time. They just don't make them like this anymore. The chain had carbide inserts in the teeth, making it incredibly sharp and powerful. It could cut through steel. That's what the carbide chain was designed for, to cut through spikes and other tough stuff buried in tree trunks. The engine had just been serviced, and I had personally sharpened the chain on my diamond wheel grinder the day before. This chainsaw was incredibly fast at cutting and had plenty of horsepower for the job ahead. Because I was within the city limits, I had to install a muffler on the chainsaw, much to mine and Josh's dismay. We both grew up and worked with loud chainsaws and loved the sound of them roaring while cutting through big logs like butter. The permit to cut the tree required a muffler, so I had to comply with the rules. I'd follow the rules all right, and they'd better do the same. After everything was done, I took one last look around and then positioned myself to make the final cut on the tree. I had 3 wedges placed, 2 on the southward end and 1 on the north, to help guide the tree a bit. If I'd assessed the tree correctly, the tension in the trunk will cause it to break free, suddenly spinning or, as my wife Ben would say, pirouetting about a full circle before starting its downward fall. So I knew it would shift about 1 to 2 feet northward off the remaining stump, and the direction of its fall would be influenced by the lack of support underneath that part. I estimated it would fall in a west-northwest direction and land almost perfectly alongside the sidewalk. Since it had been a while since I felled a tree like this, I might be a bit rusty and off, but I hope not. I really wanted it to fall perfectly. TV news reporters tend to make one want to do things right. I took a quick look around and noticed several pickup trucks pulling up near the TV van down the street. 2 guys from those trucks were chatting with old lady Fraser. She was gesturing towards me, and they all had big smiles on their faces. It almost felt like a party atmosphere. Honestly, it was breaking my heart. This old tree and I had a history, and I never imagined I'd be the one cutting it down, especially like this. After giving the store one final check and seeing Josh already with his setup, I fired it up. It was running smoothly but way too quietly, thanks to that darn muffler. I started sawing into the base of the tree, making sure to keep my angle as precise as possible. I paused once to drive the wedges in a bit more on the south side. The north one was good to go. I sensed the movement just before I heard the snap, stepping back. I pulled the saw out with practiced ease from years of experience, turning off the saw. I took a few more steps back, giving myself some space just in case. Sometimes even the most experienced tree cutters miss something. Sometimes trees could resist even in their final moments. As expected, it shifted forward slightly and then began its graceful fall. I watched as the top started to lean over, realizing I had hit the mark perfectly with a smile. I headed towards the front porch of the house. As I reached the top step, I heard the satisfying sound of wood and metal crunching. There was a brief screech, then silence. I didn't even glance back because I knew it had fallen just right. It wasn't as loud as I had anticipated. I was surprised, looking over at Josh, who was still filming from his upper deck. I gave him the signal to make the calls. He waved his cell phone in the air and pointed to the news van, live on the scene. He exaggerated with his lips, almost as if he were a silent film star. I caught his cue and quietly mouthed back, "Live." The reporter was inching closer to our home, but the cameraman had positioned himself strategically by the van, ensuring he could capture the front, side, and back of our house. It looked like things were about to get really interesting here. I swung open our front door, still gripping the now quiet chainsaw, and stepped into the living room. My eyes immediately landed on the coffee table I'd spent 3 months crafting for Ben. It was cluttered with lingerie and underwear, a sight that felt like a punch to the gut. In the center of the table sat a wine bottle flanked by 2 glasses, carelessly placed without coasters. Another wave of irritation washed over me. Ben had never really appreciated the table, despite the hours of labor, sweat, and love I had poured into making it just for her. I set the chainsaw down and picked up the $240 backpack Ben insisted on buying when she started her new job, now just collecting dust in our closet. Unzipping it, I began stuffing the scattered underwear from the coffee table inside. Next, I grabbed a black dress and pantyhose, then moved to scoop up a man's shirt and socks from beneath the table. I found a pair of men's pants next and pulled out the wallet tucked inside. As I opened the wallet, I wondered why Ben always had to play her stereo so loud. In a way, I was fortunate because if the stereo hadn't been blaring, they might have heard the massive tree trunk as it crashed down on their vehicles. That tree had really done a number on them. Thankfully, I had managed to spread those 10 buckets of cat litter under the vehicles before I cut the tree, which seemed to have been a wise decision. Now, I took a moment to grab Ben's purse, rifling through it to find some keys in her wallet, which I promptly tossed into the backpack as well. My thoughts wandered to her new truck, which she absolutely adored. She'd customized it to mirror her best friend's truck closely. The key difference was hers ran on gasoline while her friend's used diesel. Ben's truck was a shiny new 4-door, 4-wheel drive model, decked out with custom wheels and a state-of-the-art stereo system, reflecting on it. The truck parked in front of hers looked quite similar, though I remembered the one in front still had a lien from the lender. Pete, who used to be my best friend, still owed about $32,000 on that vehicle. Ben, on the other hand, had traded in her BMW for the pickup and, thanks to the trade-in value at that time, didn't owe anything on her new truck. Unfortunately, she had taken a friend's advice to only carry the state's minimum liability insurance rather than the full coverage. I had suggested that decision was going to cost her. Now, considering her nice, fully paid-for truck was now nothing more than a flattened mess, that same friend had also switched his insurance from full coverage to just the minimum liability. Now he was in a bind, owing a huge sum on a vehicle that was practically worthless. Interesting, I mused as I picked up the saw and the backpack, pondering the twists of fate. As I approached our bedroom door, the music was blasting from inside, clear even through the closed door, along with the tunes I could hear grunting and groaning. When I tried the door, unsurprisingly, it was locked. Ben had always made sure to lock it during our intimate moments, too, even though it was just the two of us and we had no kids. I placed the backpack down beside the expensive suitcase I had already set out, taking a step back to give myself enough room to swing. I fired up the chainsaw as the chain tore into the wood around the lock. Muffled shouts came from inside the room. It only took a few seconds to cut through the door lock. I pushed the door open and caught Pete standing there, naked by the bed, his eyes wide with what looked like terror. Ben was on the other side of the room, hastily trying to cover herself and already starting to cry, as if I was still interested in what she was trying to hide. I gave Pete a nod and readied the saw a bit to drive the point home, then let it idle. The sight of the dark chain whirring around the bar must have been quite the sight for him, judging by how pale he turned. The doors are behind me, and there's the window. Choose wisely, grasshopper, I said, having always wanted to use that line. Too unfortunate it had to be under these conditions. Pete, clearly afraid, gave Ben a short glance and then made a desperate lunge through the window, smashing the glass and tearing through the screen. I started cursing beneath my breath. Now I'd have to replace the screen, the glass, and even the frame. The fool. I never honestly believed he'd crash through the window like that. I strolled up to the window and glanced down at our deck. There he was, splayed out, holding his ankle. From up here, I could tell it was broken. He wasn't going anywhere fast. Setting the chainsaw down, I shifted my focus back to my wife. She was sobbing, screaming apologies, swearing it wasn't what I believed, repeating it over and over, as if I was too foolish to see that they'd been playing house right under my nose for who knows how long. Ben, you need to shut up and listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. You are deceptive, and I rarely use such harsh words, but the gravity of the circumstance stripped away any pretense of civility, I said, pausing to allow the silence to weigh on her as she quieted down, her eyes wide with amazement, not just from my words but also from the severity in my voice, which she had never heard before. Here are the facts, and you do not have much time. I have called Mary. She's approximately 15 minutes away, possibly less, given how rapidly she drives when she's revved up. Remember this, she loves her tools and just got a new 12-gauge Magnum yesterday. Do you understand? Her face drained of color as she agreed, plainly afraid of the consequences. Good. I strongly recommend that you get dressed as soon as possible, take enough clothing, and pack them in that expensive $400 bag you insisted on purchasing last month. On your way out, don't forget to grab the backpack. It's stuffed with his clothes and your belongings from the coffee table downstairs. I spent months building it just for you. Your purse is in there, however. I have withdrawn our shared credit cards and bank card. Your personal credit card is still in there, but his credit cards and bank cards are also absent. I think Mary might be interested in those. Did you get all of that? She nodded again, tears falling down her cheeks. I had to go away for a while to compose myself. This entire experience was turning out to be more agonizing than I had expected. It's a difficult lesson to learn not to trust and love someone who has been a huge part of your life for nearly 10 years. Yours and his trucks are both out of commission. It appears that a giant tree conveniently crashed on them only a few minutes ago. You both managed to miss the excitement. I recommend that you exit by the back door, given that Mary is already on her way, and there is a TV station van parked out front with cameras running. You might want to help him get to the back gate, call a taxi, and take him to the hospital because his ankle is severely shattered. And just in case it hasn't hit you yet, we're done. The divorce papers are inside the baggage. You have been served. And don't think about returning here anytime soon. The next time you enter this house, make sure you are accompanied by the sheriff or his deputies. Got it? She nodded once again, her emotions growing into a full-fledged wail. I turned and walked away, going downstairs to await Mary's arrival. I needed to be present to ensure that nothing extreme happened. Mary is known for her fiery temper, and in this hot situation, she may not think properly. I needed to prevent a crisis between her and our spouses. I wasn't sure when they started their affair, but the fact that they did was all I needed to know. Today, the tree was a tool of my fury. For a month, I was aware of their betrayal and attempted to hide my loathing for both. I had discovered their secret by mistake and had carefully concealed my knowledge ever since. There were times when I fantasized about confronting them forcefully, and I believed that if they had been in their trucks this morning, I would have cut down the tree on them. Fortunately, reason triumphed before I acted irresponsibly, and now my concentration was on keeping Mary from making any hasty decisions. As I stepped off the front porch, the crowd rushed ahead. The television cameras were live, filming the fallen tree, the flattened vehicles, my house, and Josh. He stood proudly with his back against what was once Ben's truck's driver's side door, smiling and speaking with the reporter. He rested one foot on the crumpled metal, playing up for the cameras. Why, he's one of the nicest persons you'll ever meet. I am definitely not the sort to go off the rails, said Josh. Did you know he watches out for us? Older people are always willing to help where they can and do not demand anything in return, the neighbor exclaimed. Truly a top-notch fellow. Would you say he's untrained with a chainsaw, sir? The reporter cast a peek my direction, trying to gauge my reaction. Josh burst with laughing. Listen, the dude over there could be the best timber cutter in the entire country. He's a pro, he doesn't miss his mark or make mistakes. He always plants those trees exactly where he wants them to be. For more than a decade, he has been the reigning champion feller at the state fair. I've seen him drop trees 180 feet tall against the wind on a hill with pinpoint accuracy. No, he's not bad with a chainsaw. That is, unless you get on his wrong side. Then I wouldn't bet on your chances. I wish Josh hadn't complimented me so much right then. The last thing I wanted was for everyone in the country to know about my professional skills. It would only complicate matters if my case went to court. I turned to see some of my logging pals approaching the driveway. Ken was towing his portable hydraulic log splitter, indicating that I was about to get some much-needed assistance in turning the fallen tree into firewood. "Hello, Charlie, how are things going?" Joe called out as he climbed out of his truck. "It could be better," I said. "I've got quite a clean-up task ahead of me." "I like the kitty litter trick," Joe said with a grin. "How about cat litter?" I was a little perplexed at first. "Yeah, we were all perplexed when you returned from the store with 10 to 20 buckets of cat litter. We know you do not have a cat." "This is a wise decision," I laughed softly. "So, keep that between us, okay?" I just didn't want to deal with the city getting upset about oil or antifreeze leaking into the gutters. "Man, please remind me not to make you angry again," Charlie heard a voice from behind him. Joe is partially joking but also slightly serious. Max stepped around Joe to shake my hand, his grip firm and his smile warm and genuine. "Is that bad? My brother is still alive?" "Sure, maximum." "He's probably broken his ankle," I said. "He jumped from my bedroom window. Luckily, he missed the hot tub. I would hate to have to clean him out of there too." I joked, trying to lighten the mood. "I'm really sorry about all this, Charlie. I've never been able to figure them out." Max sighed. "He might be my brother, but I swear someone must have switched him at birth with the real one." "It's not your fault, maximum. You couldn't have known. Honestly, I never thought he'd pull something like this with my wife, and I sure as hell didn't expect Ben to betray me like this either." I admitted, feeling the weight of their actions all over again. They both shifted uncomfortably, looking away to hide the mix of anger and disappointment. The air was heavy with unspoken feelings until Joe, sensing the growing tension, steered us back to the task at hand. "That's fine. Let's get to work on this log," Joe declared, breaking the silence. "Max, grab your Johnson, and I'll get a strap. We need to pull it off the trucks." "Hello, Charlie," Max called out as he headed towards his equipment. "Is it okay if I set up the trailer here in your driveway?" Ken walked up to me and clapped me on the shoulder, a small gesture, but it was comforting at that moment. "Yeah, go ahead." "My place is yours," I said, trying to keep the mood light. "I'm sorry about, well, you know," Ken said, his voice filled with genuine regret. "Ken, you and Betty knew what was going on and kept it to yourselves because you were scared about how I'd respond. I get it. Even though it pained that you didn't tell me. Charlie, I honestly didn't know the correct call." "It's all right, Ken. I've forgiven you, man. You're a friend, and I can understand why you did what you did. But it's a total mess now, isn't it?" I sighed, feeling the gravity of the situation. "It definitely is," Ken replied. "Betty heard me out the other night, she's still shaken up by it. She also called earlier today. This entire mess has now been broadcast on television, they even caught that jerk jumping out of your window while naked. I hope someone recorded it." I chuckled, trying to find the humor in the chaos. Josh captured the majority of it with his camera, but I'm sure the TV station's got a good shot as well. It will undoubtedly be something for the scrapbook. I walked away, needing some alone time. Mary was rushing up the street, clearly enraged. To talk her down, I knew I'd have to be on top of my game, just based on the way she drove. I could tell she was incredibly upset. She came to a halt a few feet away from me and jumped out of her truck, holding her new Magnum. Her hair was wild, and the look in her eyes was fierce. I never wanted to be on the receiving end of her fury. I noticed the distinct sound of a Magnum shell being loaded. Looking to my left, I noticed the news reporter and cameraman take a step back, their faces filled with fear. Were they simply afraid, or did they hope for some action? It made me think about journalists a little. "Mary, put it down." "They've gone," I said, trying to calm her. He shattered his ankle when jumping out of the bedroom window, and Ben took him to the hospital. I wasn't sure if Ben had actually done that, but I hoped she had listened to me. She knew Mary well enough to know that she had a quick temper, and when she did, everything had the potential to spiral out of control. I hoped I could calm her down before she acted rashly. "I will shoot both of them. I'm going to end them both when I catch the jerk and the witch." "They're both done," Mary seethed. "God damn it, calm down, Mary," I said firmly, trying to defuse the situation. I was responsible for the majority of it, and nevertheless, if you follow through on your threats, you will be held accountable. I was about to go down that road, but a close friend talked me out of it. "Who convinced you not to go through with it?" Josh asked, concerned. "He cares about me and doesn't want to see me in prison for years. If you keep going like this, you will end yourself there," I explained, quoting my friend's wise words. "Charlie, are they really worth all this pain?" "Look what they've done right beneath our noses," Mary said, tears beginning to pour down her cheeks. I grabbed the tool from her grasp, she reluctantly gave it over, and I loaded it into her pickup. I also removed her keys from the ignition, locked the truck, and saved the keys just in case. Then I embraced her tightly. We stood there while the crowd and photographer stared. "Mary, do you want to talk to this elderly lady we found old Lady Fraser beside Ben's damaged pickup?" I asked, trying to redirect her focus. Mary, tearful, stretched out and grabbed her hand. I looked around for the judge, but he was nowhere to be seen. He must have been in court. "Yeah, that sounds good," Charlie replied, his voice wavering. "Charlie, are you also coming along?" Mary asked, her voice cracking. "No, I've got some wood to stack up before it gets dark. It's best to get it done while I still have all of this help," I responded, trying to lighten the mood. Mrs. Fraser gave me a harsh look before nodding in satisfaction. "Charles, you'll be down at my place in 1 hour," she commanded. "Yes, m." It took 1 hour. "I'll be there," I promised her. Behind me, my companions were gently joking. Charlie is classic, hiding under the skirts like he always was. He always makes the elderly ladies worried and want to talk to him. It appears that this is how he avoids further labor, one of them teased. "Hello, Charlie. Think we can section off this tree in 1 hour?" "That's a large tree to handle," another friend remarked. Yeah. I understand," I shot back, amused. "But you're all familiar with the drill. When Mrs. Fraser sets a time, you must arrive on time. You've all been there, so relax, you jokers." They chuckled and returned their attention to chopping the dead tree into manageable bits. A stern voice broke through the background hubbub. "Charlie Wilson, you've been arrested." I swung around to find the local police officers by their car, attempting to act authoritative as they approached me. The television camera continued to roll. My buddies hesitated, ready to defend me, but I waved them off. "What's the reason for the arrest?" I asked, perplexed. "Private property destruction, vandalism, and attempted murder, and whatever else we may find here." "And cutting down that tree without permission, that'll stick," the officer answered sternly. "First and foremost, I have the necessary permits to cut the tree. Second, the tree falling on those trucks was purely an accident. You are unable to prove otherwise. Third, have you consulted with the judge before bothering me today? Finally, there was an attempt at murder. If I had wanted him dead, he would have been," I retorted, my voice filled with conviction. "Do you honestly believe I am that reckless?" "Unlike you two, I have common sense," I concluded with finality. That final remark caused the officers to exchange uncomfortable glances before turning and walking silently away. The judge I mentioned is not only a genuine judge, but also a friend and neighbor. Despite the recent occurrences, he has remained supportive. The officers understood not to cross him. He could easily make their professional lives more difficult. An hour later, I was strolling up Mrs. Fraser's sidewalk. Back at the scene, the men were finishing cutting the tree into sections. Ken had been busy with the splitter, converting each section into firewood. A couple of other friends had arrived with their pickups and trailers, loaded with wood to transport to Mrs. Fraser's woodshed. They shooed me away, joking that I wasn't much help and should go to Mrs. Fraser's. Honestly, I appreciated the break. It allowed me to clear my mind after such a hectic day. When I arrived at Mrs. Fraser's, I settled into a large, ancient chair in her living room. Mary was there too, sitting quietly, her eyes red but her demeanor calmer than earlier. I tossed the keys to her pickup into her lap, signaling a moment of peace in the midst of the chaos. "Do you think you'll be okay now? Not giving me any more worries, right?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "I reckon I won't be going hunting anymore, but I'll be on the hunt for a lawyer tomorrow," she replied sadly. "Mine said they'd help you out if you need it. Might be easier since they know a lot about them both now, but of course, you might want your own lawyer." "Just a thought," I offered, trying to be helpful. "I'll talk to them." "It's a she heard she's the best around here," Mary agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, I'll go visit her," she continued, determination seeping into her tone. "How are you doing, Charlie?" "It must have been difficult to learn all of this," Mary asked, her eyes filled with concern. "I will be able to manage." "It may take some time," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "If you need to talk or do anything, I'm here for you." "We are just talking, nothing more," she reassured me. I nodded, knowing precisely how she felt. "How did you feel while watching the old tree wreck?" I inquired, curious about her perspective. "I'll admit, their trucks felt pretty good. Still irritates me, I had to cut it down, but seeing it serve a purpose was almost worth it," she said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Pete will come to regret downgrading his insurance coverage," I commented, confirming my suspicion regarding his debt on that pile of junk. "Almost 32 grand, he's in for a lot of pain," I added, almost feeling sorry for him. "But not as much as I'll make sure of," she finished, a steely resolve in her eyes. "Do you think he and Ben will stay together?" I asked, curious about her feelings toward the man who had caused so much trouble. "I don't get what she saw in him. My guess is that as soon as he gets out of the hospital, he will flee. This is the second time I've discovered him cheating on me. If Ben ends up with him, she'll go through a lot of heartache." "It was foolish of her to lose you in this way," Mary said, her voice filled with a mix of anger and disappointment. "Perhaps she is not as intelligent as I thought," I mused, reflecting on the situation. "Pete has his own business that is worth something," Mary burst out laughing. I must have looked very manly. "It's my business that has always been the case. My name appears on all land titles, business licenses, loans, and other legal documents. He doesn't have anything. I assumed he owned it all." "Did you work for him?" "That is exactly what he told you," I said, realizing the manipulation. "Typical. It's always been my responsibility, he just did it. I got it from my uncle, he and they had nothing to do with it. Success, he's just a figurehead. So you'll be fine, right?" "At the very least, they are better off than I am," I said, trying to see a silver lining. "That's great news. I'm glad at least one of us will do well, but Ben will probably need a new job," Charlie replied, concern lacing his words. "You'll be fine too, the entire city admires you, trust me, Ben," I said, though I could feel my ex-wife's job prospects fading with those words. Mrs. Fraser arrived with coffee cups. "So have you spoken with the judge yet?" "Not just yet, Mrs. Fraser, maybe in a month or so," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "Excuse my language, Charles, but that is complete nonsense," Mrs. Fraser chided. "Call him and make an appointment right away. He is furious about what happened to you and Ben, especially Pete and Ben. He has a lot of respect for you." "Judge Fraser has limited power," I tried to explain. "What's going on, honey?" she asked, concerned. "He certainly can," Mrs. Fraser insisted. "You filed for a divorce from Ben. The judge will most likely preside over the case, given your history. He will ensure that you are treated fairly. He told me this himself." "The judge owes me nothing at all," I said, feeling a bit overwhelmed. "You have done a lot for his family over the years, Charles. Giving us firewood is one example. You have always looked out for me, even when my worthless grandson mistreated you, Mrs. Fraser said, her voice filled with gratitude. Mrs. Fraser, this is different, I tried to argue. Pete Fraser may share our name, but he's a bad scoundrel. What is done here today will be remembered by our family for years to come, but not in a good way, she continued, her voice filled with disappointment. Max, you have always been a true friend to him and the rest of us. He should have known better than to mess with your wife, she added, her voice softening. We all hoped you wouldn't hurt him, even though he deserved it. That's what makes it so difficult, she sighed. Everyone, including Pete, cares about you, she said, trying to comfort me. Thanks, Mrs. Fraser, I said, touched by her words. Tough, 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 son. You're a pro at making things sound milder than they are, she commented, her eyes filled with admiration. By the way, why aren't you calling me Old Lady Fraser like usual? That's what you call me when I'm not around, right? She asked, catching me off guard. I turned red, and Mary looked surprised. What? You didn't think I knew that? Everyone calls me Old Lady Fraser. Charles, you should know by now that I'm not clueless. Yeah, I admitted, feeling a bit embarrassed. Don't you dare apologize, young man, she interrupted sharply. I honestly view it as a compliment when folks say Old Lady Fraser. Everyone knows who they mean. I know you all respect me, deep down, even if it sounds a bit cheeky. I kind of enjoy it, to be honest. After all, I'm not getting any younger, she said, chuckling. Yes, I agreed, relieved that she had taken it well. Now call the judge. He's waiting. He's got some words of wisdom for you. I've known him for 50 years, and he's always given wonderful counsel to those who listen, she instructed. Yes, I promised, pulling out my phone to make the call. I never felt like you're in trouble back in school, caught doing anything wicked like smoking in the boys' room or throwing spitballs. That's how Old Lady Fraser could make you feel with only a few words. She had a certain way about her, I thought to myself, reflecting on her influence. She always respected honesty, and if you were honest about your feelings, she'd respect you and your diverse perspectives. Her husband, the judge, was similar in that sense. They were respected members of the community, also being Pete and Max's grandparents, I continued, lost in thought. We're in quite a mess, aren't we? Are you kicking her out, Charles? Mrs. Fraser asked, bringing me back to the present. Yes, I served her with divorce papers a while back, I confirmed. I believe she brought Pete to the hospital. I sincerely hope so. Anyway, he fractured his ankle. He's fortunate if that's all he got, I added, a hint of satisfaction in my voice. We were scared you might break his neck or shoot him, Mrs. Fraser said, her concern evident. By the way, you did an excellent job removing the tree. I've never seen it better. Thanks, she complimented. I wasn't sure it was appropriate to address this with Mrs. Fraser, or rather Old Lady Fraser. The trunk received more attention than I expected. That's what caused it to spin like that, I explained, trying to downplay the incident. Keep your poker face and stick to your story as much as possible, young man. I've been around. I recognize you and know that no one is better at felling trees than you. That's what concerns me. This is why the judge wants to speak with you. He has some valuable legal advice for you. I believe he intends to keep you out of trouble, she advised. You know Charles, he thinks highly of you, and so do I, she reassured me. Thank you, Nice move with the kitty litter under those vehicles. I appreciate that you took precautions to keep oil and antifreeze from seeping into the drain, she praised, making me blush. I nodded while Mary looked at me with admiration. Did you plan it all? Her inquiry lingered, I recalled. Old Lady Fraser stared at me and laughed. Mary, I thought you were aware. Charles oversaw everything from start to finish. Pete fracturing his ankle during his crazy jump out the bedroom window was most likely luck, but everything else was well planned, I said, a hint of pride in my voice. Charlie, Please remind me not to ever make you angry, Mary said, half jokingly. It isn't a huge thing, Mary. You could have dropped that tree on Pete while he was in his truck. How come you didn't? She asked, genuinely curious. As I previously stated, they are not worth any of us ending up in jail because they created their own situation and are now responsible for it, I explained, my voice filled with conviction. Charlie, she truly cared about that truck, Mary said, referring to Ben. Yes, Mary, she did. It appears that she was concerned with more than just me, I agreed, feeling a mix of emotions. Mrs. Fraser approached from behind me and placed her hand on my shoulder. I believe we all forget how much you've spent in her, Charles, she said, her voice filled with sympathy. I'm sorry it turned out this way, I said, trying to express my regret. It's okay, Mrs. Fraser, I reassured her. What did I just say? Call me Old Lady Fraser. I prefer it, okay, she reminded me, her tone light but firm. I'm referring to Old Lady Fraser, I corrected myself, feeling a bit flustered at the prospect of calling her by such a name. I flushed at the prospect of calling her by such a name. I wish I hadn't heard it this way. I was fortunate that she accepted it politely, despite how it sounded, I thought to myself, relieved. I should go up there and help the folks. There is still a lot of wood to cut for firewood, I said, making a move to leave. They're already done. Ken and Max unloaded the last full trailer in my woodshed. A time back, when they want to, they can move very quickly. However, they could certainly use a few right now. Perhaps you should take them to the tavern, Mrs. Old Lady Fraser suggested. You have a good concept, I'll do it, Charles. No matter what happens, you're a good guy. There's nothing greater, she said, her voice filled with admiration. Have you heard me? She asked, making sure I was listening. Yes. I understand you, I replied, feeling a surge of gratitude for her support. I hugged Mary and Old Lady Fraser before leaving. The cold beer was surprisingly refreshing, given everything else going on around me. My companions kept the mood light with their constant stream of jokes, which managed to make me smile despite the pandemonium. These were the real deal, true pals who came through when things were tough. Max especially stood out, making a joke about Pete, claiming he must have been switched at birth because I felt more like a brother to him than Pete did. We'd grown up together, and I'd heard him say it before, but it impacted me differently today, given everything. I spent the following 4 nights completely alone in my large silent house. The silence was oppressive, a startling reminder of how rapidly life had flipped upside down during those long evenings. Josh's buddy stopped by. He added that Ben had temporarily returned to live with her parents. They were upset with the existing scenario, understandable, yet their devotion to family was unwavering. It was difficult to know, she was just as embroiled in this mess. One evening, the judge paid a visit to my house. His expression was serious and concerned. He wasn't just a distant presence in the courtroom. He was genuinely concerned about my well-being. He gave legal advice that was firm but fair. He told me he didn't want to see me behind bars, especially after the incident with the tree, a mishap that had far exceeded my expectations. He'd taken some proactive steps to assist, but he was clear that we needed to align our stories to avoid legal ramifications. He made it clear that his advice did not involve lying or engaging in illegal behavior. Instead, he taught me how to articulate my side of the story, choose my words carefully, and deal with the emotional rollercoaster of my impending divorce. 2 months later, during a tense courtroom scene, Ben's attorney was visibly shaken when the judge threw a curveball. Frustrated by the proceedings, the judge abruptly halted the divorce process. He needed a moment to collect his thoughts. When we met again, he delivered a verdict that not only surprised everyone but also left Ben's attorney speechless, and my own lawyer nodding in agreement. The judge's decision was unexpected, but it restored some semblance of order to the chaos that had upended my life. I hereby grant the divorce in accordance with the original terms presented to this court, the judge stated, unequivocally granting Mr. Charles Masters' petition with prejudice. Ben, you cannot appeal. You've been dragging your feet for the past 2 months, attempting to delay the process. I can only assume you're trying to persuade Charles to drop the divorce action. I cannot justify your tactics. You made the bed, it's time to lie in it. Charles offered a fair split of the assets, and that was it. Ben's attorney was taken aback by the unexpected decision, but he quickly caught up. My client deserves more than that, Your Honor, he argued. Young man, if you continue, I will find you in contempt of court. I will put you in jail and might not let you out for a long while. Do you comprehend? Yes, sir. Your Honor, sir. Ben, I need to talk with you privately before you leave. The judge's expression softened as he addressed Ben. We were absolved, and I wondered what the judge wanted to discuss with Ben, but all I wanted was to get out of the courtroom and breathe fresh air. Ben, I'm not sure what you're aiming for here. I understand you don't want a divorce, but can't you see how blatantly you exposed your affair with Pete to Charles? Good Lord, girl, you even traded your nice car for a pickup similar to his. What did you think? Ben looked at the floor, speechless in front of the judge. She had become involved in an affair with this man's grandson, who also happened to be her husband's friend. She couldn't quite understand what had happened. All she knew was that what began as a harmless attraction had devolved into a dangerous mess. In recent months, she had pondered trying to figure out why she had betrayed her husband, but she had no response other than I could, a realization that did not sit well with her. She was aware that she had made a mistake but could not figure out how to correct it. He scolded her in the judge's chambers, where at least it was private. Charles wouldn't look at her again, once he was away from the prying eyes and ears of the courtroom. The few times he did, it reminded her of the day her world fell apart. The sound of the chainsaw breaking through the bedroom door terrified her more than anything else. She expected Charlie to offer, and oddly, she didn't think much of Pete after that. She took him to the hospital to avoid Mary, heeding her husband's advice, knowing it might be the last she ever heard from him. Charlie called her that name, deceitful, which shattered her. The pain lingered in her heart, standing there without clothes, with another man who was her husband's best friend. She felt like a deceitful person because of Charlie's damage to the pickup, all those minor favors he performed for her over the years that she dismissed as insignificant. Even Charlie's efforts to keep her away from Mary set off a chain reaction of foolish thoughts about how this affair would play out. She never thought Charlie would find out. In her worst nightmare, she imagined that if he did, they would be hurt. However, they eventually reconciled. But reality did not meet her expectations. She was worried about finding a new job after learning that Mary owned the company and Pete was only an employee. Her initial reaction was shock. Working with Pete in the same office was difficult because they broke workplace rules. Second, her new boss Mary made it clear that she was going to be fired soon. Ben quit on the spot, apologizing to Mary. Charlie had always been the person she could confide in about anything, but he was no longer there for her. Finally, the events of the morning were broadcast live to everyone's televisions and living rooms, which had a profound impact on her. She had everything, and she gave it all up for what purpose? She wasn't even particularly close to Pete, and she didn't love him. She remembered the day she got the coffee table Charlie made for her. Despite her neglect, she cherished it dearly. Charlie's use of craftsmanship to express love has touched her deeply. Ben realized she had taken Charlie for granted, assuming he would always be available to her. This belief led her to mistreat his gifts selfishly, believing that he would replace or repair them. She realized her own selfishness and felt she had failed not only Charlie but also her own family, as well as the judge and his family, particularly old Lady Fraser, who had once treated her as an adult but now barely acknowledged her. Ben recalled Mrs. Fraser's disappointment when they met at the grocery store. Mrs. Fraser and the judge avoided her as if she were contagious, leaving Ben deeply wounded. All this chaos for a brief thrill with Charlie's best friend, who, after having his way with her, began to disrespect Charlie and her presence. He led her down a destructive path before abandoning her, blaming her for everything. In retrospect, Ben realized she had taken love for granted when she first received it but had never fully appreciated its worth until she destroyed it. I leaned back against the cabin's porch. Josh had owned this cabin for a long time, and after I sold my house and finished my divorce with Ben, he offered it to me. I was aware of the cabin, but when we transferred the title, I discovered it included 700 acres of land. I said to Josh, "Are you crazy? This property is far more valuable than the $72,000 you are asking for. 700 acres, that doesn't make sense when I buy it from you. People will think you are becoming senile. They'll say I took advantage of an elderly man who was unable to defend himself." "Hold on for a second, young man," Josh shot back. "First and foremost, I am completely rational, my mental state is fine. In addition, I can sell my land to anyone at whatever price. Furthermore, I've already turned down higher offers from developers. You are getting this deal because I have known you your entire life. I trust you won't sell it to a developer who will simply demolish the trees and build dwellings. I know you'll keep what I really like about this place." "Josh, you're well aware that this land is worth millions," I reminded him. "I set a low price so that no developer would acquire it and damage it, and I really admired how you sold your home to that lovely couple." "You may have gotten a higher price for it somewhere else, but you didn't," Josh said. "Do you know why? That guy was hoping to earn a quick buck because he knew I needed to leave as soon as possible after my divorce. He was just partially correct. I wanted to complete the divorce as quickly as possible, so you could have made much more money, but you sold it to a young couple with 2 children. Why? They brought me back to happier times, and I wanted to help them. I think they'll take good care of the place," I explained. "Now I understand." "Exactly, Charlie, I always knew you were smarter than most people imagined. Take good care of the home, please. It's really peaceful up on the mountain," Josh said, his voice filled with emotion. "From this vantage point, I can see the valley, the flashing city lights, and even my old neighborhood. I put a hot tub to one side of the cottage, along with a robust deck to add to its appeal. With these and other changes, it's no longer just a cabin. However, I will always refer to it as the cabin with affection. Next to it, I've built a garage, connected to the cottage by a covered walkway to protect me from the elements. The setup includes an antique barn with a traditional hip roof and a practical workshop. Overall, it has become a lovely place to live and relax. I also installed a corral to provide a rustic touch to the space and got it running properly. I'm currently hosting 6 horses for some urban people. They have 700 acres of private land ideally suited for riding, not to mention the enormous woodland of the national park that lies beyond. Professionally, I'm still with the same company, coordinating with Alex's and logging crews. Surprisingly, boarding these 6 horses has evolved into a lucrative side gig. My friends, including Josh, the judge, Mrs. Fraser, and other old buddies, continue to pay me visits. On weekends, I have not seen her since the day Ben and I signed our divorce papers. To be honest, I miss our company, while I do not miss the arguments and upheaval that led to our breakup. Letting go of the past can be difficult. Sometimes life's lessons are brutal and difficult to swallow. After a series of disappointing dates, I met someone absolutely exceptional. She's a keeper, and I'm seriously considering making a long-term commitment despite my fears about getting too close again. She has been patient and understanding, gently removing the walls I had put around my heart. She works as a TV reporter, and even when she's not around, I can see her on television, which provides some comfort. Interestingly, she is the same television reporter who reported the infamous tree-felling episode. Time passed, and I learned a few great life lessons, and she eventually interviewed me for a logging article. That's when I asked her out, and the rest, they say, is history. She has a still image of the old tree lying across those 2 pickup trucks. That image has gone viral online, appearing in TV program gags and even in humorous birthday cards. She profited handsomely from selling the rights to it. Josh often laughs when he sees that photo on the fireplace mantel. The frame is made from the same tree's wood, providing an added layer of irony to the display. Rather than the usual adornment, such as magnums or other mantelpiece ornaments, the Johnson chainsaw that cut down the tree is positioned above it. I've put the chainsaw away for good. It hasn't cut anything since the terrible day. Jessica is aware that it continues to operate. I fired it up a couple of times just for fun when she's present. When I ask her about it, she usually gives me this expression and shudders, all she says is that she had no idea how well that pain could cut through wood. She frequently reflects on how foolish Ben was to be in that position at the time. I have to agree with her on that point. After all, Ben lost a perfectly excellent pickup and ended up with, not exactly nothing, but she clearly lost me, and I know it bothers her. Jessica, on the other hand, is pleased and safe, knowing that I am only committed to one lady. I've always been like that and will continue to be. Life has shown me the harsh reality of what happens when one deviates from faithfulness. If you look closely at the antique picture frame, you'll find some stains on the wood from oil and antifreeze that had sunk deep into the green wood when I built and finished the frame. I made certain to leave the stains visible. Don't you think it adds to the overall story? It serves as a continual reminder to me to prioritize what is actually important in my life. Thank you for hearing today's tales. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you have not already. Also, please leave a comment below to express your thoughts on what transpired. Please take care. I cautiously handled the evening traffic across London to the Marriott Hotel. My mind was racing with ideas about the upcoming crisis and its ramifications. No matter what happens tonight, at least 3 people's lives will be permanently changed. My name is Alex, short for Alex Vitor, and I am of Italian origin. My parents relocated to the United Kingdom in the late 1960s and opened an Italian restaurant, which became the foundation of our close-knit family. Even if we no longer live together, family reunions are always overcrowded, and absent one means suffering my grandmother's disapproving looks. I married Emily 7 years ago. Despite being a joyful relationship, it lacked long-term stability. My grandmother disliked Emily and warned me to be cautious. Her comments echoed in my mind as I traveled through London's congested traffic. I found out a month ago that Emily had been cheating on me for the previous 6 months. I found out after she accidentally left a hotel key card in her purse. This minor error led me to discover her cheating. I resolved to conduct my investigation secretly. We frequently met together with friends Lucas and Joanna, as well as James and Sarah, at a quaint restaurant owned by my cousin Lucas, like an older brother to me. He had a colorful history but was always loving and protective. His wife Joanna was fiery and the one person he feared. Our evenings were always wonderful, but tonight everything felt different. As I walked toward the hotel, knowing the truth about Emily and ready for the backlash, I met James at work, and we clicked. We were the same age with similar perspectives on life. We periodically played golf together and socialized with his wife Sarah at the golf club. Sarah and Emily get along nicely, and we often spend days shopping together. James was generally warm and friendly, while Sarah appeared aloof at times, particularly recently. Then she'd snap out of it and rejoin the others. I discussed it with Emily, but she dismissed it as woman problems. Lucas and Joanna arrived one evening while we were enjoying cocktails in the lounge. We exchanged pleasant greetings, and the server brought us fresh drinks. Emily was consistently amazed by the wonderful service we received. My cousin had our regular corner table set up, secluded yet facing the door as Lucas always insisted, and we didn't question it. "Why are James and Sarah coming?" Joanna questioned Emily. "I spoke with her previously, they're definitely coming, although they may be a little late." "James isn't home yet." Lucas looked at the women then at me, shaking his head slightly. I decided to ask him later. James and Sarah came, flushed, and Lucas gave them a long deadpan look. Something seemed wrong. We sat down and discussed work and family. After lunch, we went to the lounge. The females danced as we sipped cocktails and discussed sports. When the music subsided, we joined them on the dance floor. Emily rubbed against me, implying that more would come later. Lucas and Joanna returned to the table, but James and Sarah were stiff. "Is everything well between the two?" I muttered to Emily. "Yeah, I suppose so," but Sarah said nothing. Emily attempted to distract me as we headed back to the table. Lucas grinned at me and Joanna laughed. Sarah instantly rushed to the bathroom, prompting the other women to follow suit. "Is everything all okay, James?" Lucas asked. Coolly, "Yes, sure, not an issue," but his body language suggested otherwise. When the women returned, Sarah's body language revealed her identity. Emily's gaze confirmed my suspicions. We attempted to ignore the stress. Lucas nudged me and winked. He knew something. After a few more dances, my cousin phoned for a taxi. I spotted Emily and James engaged in a lively conversation, another strangeness in the evening. "So what's up with James and Sarah?" I asked Emily. "Honestly, nothing, they are fine," she grinned as she peered out the window. I suspected something was awry, but chose to speak with Lucas the next morning. That night, Emily was exceptionally passionate as she declared her love for me. "I love you too, sweetie. Don't ever forget that you are my wife. Nobody will take you away from me, and I won't give you an excuse to." I hugged and kissed her as we fell asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, recalling the unusual happenings of the evening. I should contact Lucas first thing in the morning. Emily departed early for the gym. I drank glass after glass of orange juice to clear my mind. I googled the hotel name using the pen in her handbag. It extended across London, with convenient parking. I took note of the contact information but found no online booking history. "The history has been wiped clean," paranoia said in so. I called Lucas. "Lucas, this is Alex. What's going on between James and Sarah? Should I be worried?" "You seem to remember something." My voice was filled with concern. "Alex, please meet me at my brother's pub around mid-afternoon. I'll tell you everything in person, not via phone," Lucas answered. "Is Ethan serious?" I asked. "Of course, I will be there," I agreed promptly and arrived alone. "Okay," he continued, making the situation appear even more grim. "Yes, I do understand," I responded, feeling a knot form in my stomach. The call ended, leaving me with a feeling of impending dread. I sat staring at my phone, anxiety turned in my stomach. An hour later, Emily stepped in, looking energized from her workout. "Good workout?" I asked, attempting to sound nonchalant. "Yes, that was fantastic. I needed it," she said, throwing her purse and exercise bag aside. "I'm going to see Carl. He wants to discuss something, but it won't take long," I informed her, trying to hide my fear. "What does he want, Alex?" she asked, her words tinged with suspicion. "He still creeps me out." "He is a good person, but don't underestimate him," I warned. "I won't take long," I assured her, although I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Emily gave me a look I couldn't understand. I drove carefully to Lucas Brothers' establishment, a fashionable, unassuming location. Lucas opened the door and checked to see whether I was being followed. "Okay, Lucas, what is happening?" I asked, concerned. "Your call concerned me, and I'm not sure what to think." As soon as I saw him, he looked me in the eyes and whispered, "Follow me." We went to the office at the back, he closed the door, and we sat down. "Alex, you are like family to me. I told your father that I would always take care of you. What I'm about to tell you will hurt, but you should hear it," Lucas began, his eyes filled with pain. My heart raced. I sensed it had something to do with my wife. Lucas retrieved a huge envelope from his desk and handed it to me. I knew it contained something that would transform my life. "Is this bad?" I inquired, my tone barely above a whisper. He nodded, his eyes filled with sympathy. "Alex, I am here for you," he remarked, raising his hand. I took the mail and opened it. Inside were photographs of my wife with another man, in a cheap hotel and on our bed. When I looked at Lucas, tears blurred my vision. "How did you find out?" "Who is he?" I demanded, surprised and angry. "Alex, several weeks ago I heard rumors about Emily. I did not have proof until recently. A friend spotted her with this man in South London. They were too close to be comfortable. He recognized her," Lucas explained. "And who is Ethan Drew?" I asked, attempting to process the information. "He is James's brother," Lucas replied. "You must know him." I was stunned as the pieces fell into place. James, Emily, Sarah. I discovered a pin from a London hotel. Is it there? I asked, hoping for more details. Yeah, Alex. I'm sorry, but my guy followed them last week while you were out of town. Their first meeting happened when you weren't home, Lucas continued. I clenched my fists tightly. I'm going to eliminate that, I growled, anger boiling over. Easy, Alex. It's not worth it. Divorce her and let me deal with him, Lucas advised. No, Lucas. I have to handle it myself. He needs to know it was me. Do you know where he lives, in works? I insisted, determined. All the info is in the envelope, he said, his eyes turning cold. What's your plan? I asked, trying to calm down. He poured me a whiskey. How well do you get along with James? He seemed off in the restaurant with Sarah and your wife. I think he knows what's going on. Can you still call him a friend? Lucas inquired. I wondered if his wife was involved too. We need to act soon, but first see a lawyer. Do you want to try to make up with her if it was an isolated incident? Maybe, but seeing this, I can't forgive her. Forget it. I need to think about this, Lucas. I want them both to suffer, I set my mind swirling with thoughts of revenge. He handed me a business card, divorce lawyer. He's ruthless. I've briefed him on your situation. Call him, and he'll take care of it. Plus, he's a cousin, he laughed, and I managed to smile. We planned our next steps for an hour. I called cousin Lucas, and he sprang into action. We agreed to wait until everything was ready. I needed to find out how involved James and Sarah were. I drove home, my mind racing. When I arrived, the house was silent. Emily was gone. A note on the kitchen table read, "I'll see Sarah later. Love you." I crumpled it and threw it away. I called Lucas. She's gone to Sarah's, but I know she's with James. Our guy is watching her. Lucas informed me over the phone, okay. So where's Sarah then? Let me know if anything comes up. I responded. 3 hours later, Emily arrived home. Hey love, how was your day? I inquired as she stormed in, kissed my cheek, and proceeded to the kitchen. It was fine. Lucas and I are working on a plan, she answered, waiting for further details. I didn't offer any. It's a personal matter with a cousin. He feels his wife is cheating and needs advice, I said, smiling as I observed her, trying to suppress a casual smile. I'm sure it'll work out, she said, looking away, a bit upset. The remainder of the weekend dragged on. I couldn't force myself to be physically engaged with her, haunted by the images Lucas had showed me of her with Ethan. She was a greater liar and actress than I ever anticipated. She came over on Sunday night, evidently looking for a good time. Alex, I need us to spend the night together. I understand you've been busy, but I need you now, please, she whimpered. We made love, but then she looked stunned. What is wrong? So we haven't done this before, she said. I just wanted to be sure you were mine. I love you, Emily, and I do not want to lose you, I responded, my heart heavy. You will not lose me, she replied with a smile, but her comment ripped at my heart. The image of her with Ethan was burned into my memory. We laid silently, each with our own thoughts. I snuck out of bed as she fell asleep and went downstairs. I poured a huge glass of Jack Daniels and checked my computer. A message from Lucas appeared, all of the wheels are turning here, precisely as we mentioned. Okay, I figured all I needed to do now was plan A. Sleepover for Wednesday. I texted him back, okay. An hour later, I climbed back into bed but couldn't fall asleep. I eventually slept, barely receiving a few hours of uneasy sleep. In the morning, I showered and walked downstairs. Emily greeted me with a smile, breakfast, coffee, and toast. She stepped gently, catching my eye. You were a little wild last night, sweetie. I don't think I'll be up for another round for a few days, she said, kissing me again. It's okay, I smiled through my coughing fit. She drank her coffee. I need to travel to Leeds on Wednesday. Would you mind? She asked. Only for one night, I inquired. Yes, but I won't be returning until late Thursday, she said. Does this have anything to do with Lucas? She asked. Yes, it's about the cousin I mentioned. He could need some help, I lied smoothly. Lucas gives me the creeps. I'm not sure what type of help he could provide, she admitted with a shiver. You would be surprised, but you don't want to get on his wrong side, I warned her. Her face became pale, but I could tell she was still planning something. I checked my watch and got up to leave. I've had to go, honey. Be a good girl while I am gone, I murmured this as I kissed her head and left. I met with the lawyer and spent an hour discussing possibilities and signing agreements. He confirmed that everything would be ready by Wednesday afternoon. I put all of our savings into a new account in my name and sent a significant sum to Lucas. I emptied our safe deposit box and created a new account with another bank. I cut off her stipend, knowing she'd be in trouble before the end of the month. Satisfied, I went to my workplace and completed my normal tasks. My secretary's safety was a huge assistance, and I knew she could handle things without me. I noticed her anxious look on my side and turned to face her. I'd known her for about 5 years, and she was always professional and extremely devoted. She'd been nice to Emily, but there was some tension. I was certain Emily had mentioned her attitude, but I always dismissed it. Staring at her worried expression and piercing blue eyes, I knew I needed to say something. She knew my insides were churning. I took a long breath, attempting to gather my thoughts and regulate my emotions. Unfortunately, there may be interruptions this week if I'm not available. You understand how to keep things functioning, okay? I replied. Yes, boss. Is there anything I can help with? She inquired, noticing my distress. Emily is playing me, I confessed. I couldn't hold it in any longer. You are joking, my God. Alex, this is terrible. Are you certain? She exclaimed, her eyes wide open in shock. I nodded slowly. She saw my tears and shut the door. She hugged me tight, standing next to her. I sensed the love I was missing at home. I sobbed for the first time since learning the news, and she held me until I calmed down. She took my face in her hands and gazed into my eyes. Alex, you are a good person. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. What are you planning to do? She inquired, her voice filled with concern and support. I am going to get a divorce and deal with it, I stated, my resolve hardening. I understand, but take care, Alex. Do not do anything stupid. She cautioned. Olivia was worth her weight in gold. She handled everything flawlessly, making her husband a fortunate man. At home, Emily and I were watching television when the phone rang. She answered it in the hallway, speaking quietly. After 5 minutes, she returned. What is wrong? I asked. Nothing. Sarah is talking about fighting with James again. It's driving me crazy, she replied. Are they in major trouble? James never mentioned it, I said, scanning her face for cues. I believe it's nothing. They will figure it out, she responded with a nonchalant tone. Is that what was going on in the restaurant? I asked. Emily looked nervous. She didn't know I had noticed something between them. Yeah, they had a fight before going out, she admitted. Is that what you were doing with James? I pressed. Sarah asked me to talk to James, she explained. So what was that about, Emily? Maybe I can help, I suggested. It's all right, Alex. I'm sure they've sorted it out by now, she said dismissively. I don't like the thought of a friend's marriage in trouble, I said. He's not cheating, is he? I probed further. No, nothing like that, she replied, her face flushing. So this is Sarah playing a prank on himself? I asked skeptically. Look, Alex, I don't know. Let's mind our own business, she snorted. I think so too, But I might mention it to James when I see him, I said, ending the conversation as I looked at the TV again. Her eyes narrowed. A few minutes later, I asked casually, so if neither of them are cheating, and Sarah asked you to talk to James, what was that about, Alex? Leave him alone, she snapped, getting up and running out of the room. I sat back, realizing I had gotten under her skin. Tomorrow, I would drop in on James and Sarah and disturb them a little. The next day, Tuesday, I got up early and was out the door as Emily came downstairs. I can't stop, my love. I need to get moving. Love you, I said. Emily watched in bewilderment as I disappeared, hearing my car speed off. She poured herself a cup of coffee, thinking about Ethan. Everything had been fine until last week when she met Ethan a few months ago when she was out with Sarah. They were in a club with friends when he walked in, seeing his sister-in-law. He approached and offered them all a drink. The girl smiled at the handsome guy. Sarah noticed Ethan and Emily looking into each other's eyes, and something flashed between them. Stay away from Ethan. He's a piece of crap. He even hit on me. He'll go after anyone, especially the married ones, Sarah warned. Don't worry, Sarah. I have my own Alex, but he's smooth and good-looking. Weren't you tempted, Emily? Sarah asked, sensing something behind her friend's eyes she didn't like. The rest of the evening was uneventful, but Ethan gave Emily his number. Over the next few days, Ethan called her, flirting and chatting. By the next party, Emily knew Ethan would be there. They danced, and Ethan seduced her with flattery and touches. Terry grabbed Emily's elbow, and she realized she had spent the entire evening with Ethan. Terry reprimanded her, but Emily brushed it off, claiming nothing bad happened. Ethan was confident he would get Emily sooner or later. In the following weeks, their calls and flirting intensified. When Sarah cancelled the night out, Ethan convinced Emily to meet him alone. She agreed, quickly dressed as usual, but felt different. They had a hot evening, and Ethan drove her to the Marriott. She panicked when she saw the time, hurried to get dressed, and asked Ethan to take her home. She texted Alex, saying she was waiting for a cab. That night scared her, but Alex was asleep when she got home. She hoped everything would be fine by morning. For the next few weeks, Emily continued seeing Ethan, both during nights out and during the day. During Alex's trip, she spent the night with Ethan at the hotel. Sarah guessed what Emily was up to and warned her to stop before getting caught. She fought with her husband James and asked him to press Ethan to stop. Ethan was dismissive, and James was torn between loyalty to his brother and Alex. Emily lashed out when James asked her to stop seeing Ethan. The longer it went on, the harder it was to end it without causing serious problems. Emily knew it had to be over soon, but found the risk attractive. She decided tomorrow would be the last time, but she still had to convince Ethan. By the time I walked in the door, it was late. I had been liquidating time all day, and the plans were set. The paperwork from the lawyer was in my car, and the official packet would be delivered by registered mail. Feeling tense, I poured a large drink of Jack Daniels. Emily watched me as I took a big sip and poured another. I was distraught, and I could tell Emily was too. "Are you okay?" she asked. I took another sip of my JD before turning to face her. She seemed afraid and worried. "Just a difficult day, love. I need a shower before I'm ready to talk to Lucas tomorrow." I passed past her and went upstairs without kissing her. She didn't enjoy the tight mood and questioned what I meant by getting ready for tomorrow. Beneath the hot shower, tears ran down my face. My marriage, my wife, my future, all messed up. After 30 minutes, I felt no better. My heart was breaking. I dried off, got dressed, and headed downstairs. Emily spotted my game face and seemed to relax slightly. "What's for dinner?" I asked casually. "Let's place an order." "I don't feel like cooking." "Chinese okay," she said. "Yeah, that sounds good." While we waited for the food, we sat in the living room to avoid confrontation. Dinner was silent and nearly tense. What time do you need to leave in the morning? She asked nonchalantly. Approximately 9. We have a flight at 11 o'clock, so no rush. It'll be nice to finally meet Cousin Lucas, she said, trying to sound cheerful. It was about 10 p.m., and she checked her watch. I need to finish a hard day tomorrow. I drained my glass, put it down, and glanced at her. Her eyes flickered with anguish as she closed the door between us. I've always adored you, Emily, I said this while holding her strongly. She sensed my grief and guilt. Everything would end tomorrow. She had a thought, and then she could make amends to me. I was thinking the exact same thing. I awoke to the smell of freshly brewed coffee, which always reminded me of my grandmother's house. Emily gave me a huge mug, and I kissed her cheek before taking a sip. We ate in quiet, each avoiding the other's sight. The tension was palpable. I glanced at my watch. I have to go now. I need to pick up Lucas. I stood up, set my cup down, and took a deep breath to stifle my sobs. Emily was tense and trying to stay calm. She must be aware of this. I understand. Have a safe trip and return soon, Alex, she spoke, as I gave her a courteous kiss on the forehead. I grabbed my overnight bag, started the car, and drove away without looking back, tears welling in my eyes. After a few minutes, Emily answered the phone. He's gone. Are you prepared for tonight? She asked. Yeah, baby, definitely, James responded. James had been getting on my nerves, but I ordered him to back off. Well, that will not deter us. Room for 15, same as previously. I'll see you at 8, okay? Okay, I get it. I will call you later, she said, and the man smiled while texting a message about their date. Lucas saw the letter and gave me a sad expression. Are you certain you want to do this, Alex? You know how it will end. Lucas, I adore that woman in a manner I never will again. I gave her everything, and I can't let it go. I need to make her realize what she has done and make her pay, just like her lover. I need to do it, I insisted. Lucas saw the pain in Alex's eyes and expressed it via his words. He removed a handgun from his desk and placed it in front of Alex. We will make him pay. You need the weapon to make your case, Lucas explained. Alex nodded and stared at the weapon. Lucas placed a couple of shot casings on the table. You're loaded, Alex, he said. Make it real in your thoughts. Alex grabbed up the firearm, memories flooding back. He loaded it with ease and placed it down. What's next for Alex? Lucas asked. Alex responded, let's eat, and I'll tell you everything. I might phone Sarah and James later to find out what they know and why they didn't tell me. I would leave things alone. Lucas suggested that if you are captured now you will provide the police with a motivation. There will be time later. They went to a bar where Lucas introduced Alex to his brother Alfredo. Nice to meet you, Alex, Alfredo responded, shaking his hand. They talked until a waitress delivered their meal. She smiled at Alex, introducing herself as Alicia, Lucas's niece. Nice to meet you, so my relatives told me a lot about you, she said. Alfredo, it is a joy to meet your family. Family means everything, Alex stated, despite the serious conversation. Lunch was taken leisurely. Alex felt relaxed and safe. His phone rang around 3 in the afternoon. It was Emily. Hello, Emily. How are you? Alex asked. Just checking in on you. How is Lucas doing? She inquired. We are fine, having a late lunch. What plans do you have for tonight? Alex inquired, testing her. I'm seeing Sarah. Everything is fine, she lied smoothly. Good, say hello to Sarah. Love you, Alex responded, his voice steady. I love you too. Goodbye, baby, Emily explained before hanging up. When Alex hung up, Lucas could see both pain and anger in his eyes. Okay, Alex. Lucas inquired, concerned. Yes, we're ready, Alex responded, his voice cold. They toasted and finished their beverages. "Let's meet the guys," Lucas said, leading the way. They discovered 4 men in the private quarters. Lucas introduced them as trusted friends. "These guys will not let you down," Lucas reassured Alex. Alex shivered when he saw their steely eyes. "Still want it?" Alex questioned Lucas coldly. "Yes, I need it," Lucas confirmed. "Is everything ready?" Alex questioned the men. Everything checked out. Cars, van access, and evacuation routes were prepared for the next 30 minutes, one of the men responded. The plan was reviewed until everyone agreed it was ready. Alex felt their gaze on him as he paced, tense and angry. The thought of Emily meeting Ethan was agonizing. He wanted to hit something. Lucas came in front of him and hugged him. "Easy, Alex. We'll hit the road soon." "It will become easier," he reassured him. Tears welled up in Alex's eyes as he felt frustrated, angry, and betrayed. Lucas remained by his side, and he felt the men's support for the next hour. They talked to him, preparing him for his role. A phone call interrupted them. Lucas answered, "Yeah." Everyone listened intently. "Okay, we'll get moving in 5 minutes." It was already 8 p.m. The men left to bring the van closer. Lucas noticed Alex's anxiety. "Alex, this is your last chance." "You don't need to do this," he offered. "I need to teach him a lesson that he will never forget," Alex insisted. Lucas clapped his shoulder as they exited and climbed into the redded Mercedes. They parked about 200 yards from the hotel, around 9 p.m. Lucas received an SMS, "They have arrived." He read it aloud. Alex's heart ached. Lucas maintained his hand on Alex's shoulder, grounding him. "Let's stay with the plan, Alex," he reminded him. Alex nodded. They needed to wait another hour. Another text arrived, "The lads have arrived and taken their positions." Lucas smiled uneasily. They needed to enter and exit discreetly. They discussed the idea again, and Lucas encouraged Alex to be cool. "We do not want a riot because of these two," Alex said. "Okay." Our cold eyes met. "Mind, I knew not to mess this up." "All right, Lucas. I will not shoot him in bed." "I am not that stupid," Alex smirked. "Do not lie to me, Alex. This is serious." "Get a grip," he scolded. They sat in silence until another message appeared, "We are in, exit is secured." Lucas checked the time. It was almost time. His heartbeat and breathing quickened. He removed brass knuckles from the glove compartment and opened the car door. "Okay, let us go," he said. They made their way to the motel with grim determination. Alex followed Lucas to the hotel lobby, heading directly to the elevators, trying to appear casual while avoiding eye contact. Alex was tense when the elevator arrived. They moved aside to allow a couple to depart before entering, traveling softly to the 4th floor. Alex's pulse raced as they approached room 415. He knew his wife was inside with another man. 4 men in hotel uniforms appeared with a washing cart. They wore wool hats and carried a taser. Lucas pointed out the neutralized security cameras, allowing them 5 minutes. One person used a key card to open the door. They hurried down the hallway to the bedroom. Alex noticed his wife's undergarments on the floor, his chest tightened. The men entered the bedroom first. Ethan turned just as the taser shot him. He trembled and collapsed upon Emily. The men dragged him off and shoved him into the laundry cart. Emily yelled but was swiftly gagged. Ethan left in less than a minute. Emily was bound with duct tape. Alex turned on the overhead light and entered the room, weapon in hand. She squirmed and cried. Alex pointed the rifle at her face, allowing her fear to grow. Lucas was watching him intently. Alex was worried he would snap. He pressed the trigger, but Lucas caught his hand and stopped him. Emily wet herself with dread. Lucas snatched the firearm, furious but laughing. Emily shook from fear and shock, tears flowed. Alex took off his mask. She gasped and passed out. Lucas examined his phone. It was time to leave. They crept down the stairs and out the rear of the hotel. In the car, they traveled silently, each buried in meditation. I'm heading to the meeting site. You took out the bullets, Alex thought. I thought you had lost it for a moment, Lucas muttered, gazing at Alex. Grinning, Alex said, I was not going down to liquidate her, just wanted to scare her. She will receive the message when she sees Ethan. The lads will handle him. There's no need to get your hands dirty and sell. He will remember. I need to be certain, Alex said, looking ahead as they went through the dark streets. They entered the pub where Alfredo was waiting. It was around 1 a.m. He poured them drinks, and they sat by the fireplace. As the adrenaline subsided, they began to feel human again. The last several hours had been a haze of anguish and wrath. Now in the warmth, they ate quietly. Lucas's phone beeped, and he smiled at Alex. It's finished. The boys are on their way, Lucas announced. I cannot thank them enough. I will never forget this night, Alex spoke with a mixture of appreciation and grief in his voice. Alex, shut up. It is over. You're currently engaged in other conflicts. Deal with her. You don't need to please me, Lucas replied strongly. Of course, I understand, Alex responded, recalling leaving Emily at the hotel. How will she get home? Will she confess? Doubtful, he thought. I had rooms ready. I felt fatigued. When Alfredo showed Alex to his mind, he collapsed on the bed, unable to sleep. As he replayed the night's events and reflected on Emily, he felt saddened and disgusted. He had so much love for her, but now it was over. He had divorce papers, she was scheduled to birth them today. By the time he got home, she'd know everything he knew. But what if she doesn't go home? She might visit Sarah's. I'd best reroute the papers there, he thought. After nearly 7 hours, Alicia woke him up with coffee. It is lunchtime, therefore, you have 30 minutes. Lucas stated you had an afternoon flight. Get up, your clothes are on the dresser, she said, departing. Alex got dressed and glanced in the mirror. I was different. Last night, I nearly killed a man and witnessed his death. I didn't feel anything. No regrets. Ethan deserves it, he thought. He joined the others around the table. They ate, spoke, and laughed. Soon, it was time to leave. They packed and drove out. Alex waved at the faces as they left, their care was comforting. I promised myself to return shortly, he thought. I drove home slowly, feeling increasingly dreadful. My rage had subsided, replaced by a love for my wife. I dropped Lucas off, and Joanna hugged him like newlyweds. She also hugged me tightly, saying, so everything is going to be okay. There is a tomorrow for you. Things will be difficult for a while, but believe me, it will be fine. She replied gently. I couldn't speak, but Lucas held me, and I went home to confront Emily. Call me later, Lucas said. I nodded and drove away, feeling empty. I unlocked the door and entered. The house was warm but not comfortable, and it was quiet. He checked the living room and the kitchen, nothing. It was 6 a.m. Emily should have been home unless she was attempting to salvage their marriage. He checked his phone, no calls or texts. He sank into a chair, his rage rising at the anticlimax. He spotted a picture of Emily and him, became enraged, and flung it across the room. The frame smashed through the wall, shattering the glass. Screw you, he yelled, struggling to breathe. The telephone rang. He grabbed it. Hello, he barked into the receiver. It's Sarah, Alex. Sorry about the timing. What can I do for you? He attempted to calm down. Is it Emily? She's here and in poor shape. She doesn't want to go home. She thinks you might hurt her, Sarah expressed her anxiety, saying she shouldn't drive. Is she there? He interrupted. Yes, if she refuses to tell me, ask her to speak with me. Then ask her what happened, he gave instructions. He heard murmuring, followed by louder voices in the background. Sarah returned to the phone. Alex, she won't talk. Sarah expressed concern for her in a tight voice. I'm not sure what to say. It's okay, he reacted, attempting to regulate his feelings. What do you mean? Sarah inquired, confused. Alex, I apologize. James and I attempted to stop them. We should have informed you, but we were in a horrible situation, Sarah spoke hastily, her tone heavy with sadness. I understand, Sarah. Just make sure she remains till I arrive, he gave instructions. I'll be careful, Alex, Sarah spoke, her voice softening. I'll see you shortly, he responded before hanging up. His mind raced with the following steps. Sarah, I do not blame you or James. I'm simply sorry you didn't tell me sooner. Our friendship has been harmed. Tell Emily that I'm not going to pick her up. Her belongings will either be packed and ready for pickup or thrown away. She does not reside here anymore. She is receiving some papers delivered today. I have them sent to your address. They should arrive any minute. Tell her to think carefully before doing anything. I get it, okay, he hung up the phone and sighed. Slowly, his anger faded away, leaving nothing. He had spoken everything necessary. He felt serene but empty and alone. Maybe she'd been gone for a long, and he hadn't noticed. I miss her. I hated and adored her, he replayed everything in his thoughts, recognizing he had been naive to the signs. Exhausted, he knew things would become worse before they improved. He'd need to address her soon but not now. He drank a glass of Jack Daniels, cleared his head, and waited for sleep. He slept soundly but awoke with a hurting head and dry mouth. After a shower, he brewed coffee and drank orange juice straight from the carton as he waited for it. Around 7:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. Hello, he answered with a hoarse voice, exhausted. Alex, this is Lucas. Are you okay? Lucas's voice was full of concern. I did not do anything dumb. She visited Sarah and James. I told her everything I knew. It is all out now. I haven't heard from her since last night. She wasn't in good shape when she arrived. I explained, attempting to maintain a steady voice. Lucas laughed, no surprise. Things seem to be going well. The package was delivered, but we won't know for a day or two. The family extends its greetings. I get it. Talk shortly, he ended the call. He poured coffee to cleanse his head. He had a lot to accomplish, call the office, locksmith, bank, despite his desire not to lose her. A knock on the door came shortly after 9 o'clock. He opened it and found Sarah and James standing there. Alex, we've come to apologize. Can we speak? Sarah asked. He led them in and pointed to the living room. They sat on the couch while he settled into the chaise lounge. Okay, what would you like to say? He asked with a cold tone. James, we sincerely apologize. I'm sorry that my friends were unable to tell me my wife left me for a stranger. I have plenty of regrets, he said, feeling angry again. We tried telling her to stop. She is now at our place, Sarah pleaded, her voice full of concern. I am still confused, Sarah. What do you mean? He asked. Sarah, I had to leave as the paperwork was being prepared. I assume you're referring to something that happened between her and Ethan, he replied, not revealing his involvement yet. We do not know. We haven't heard from my brother, James, explained. Emily mumbled something about being tied up and in a motel. Come on, James. She should have said more. Did that creep do anything to her? Not that I care, but if I ever see him again, he'd better regret it, he said, his voice chilly and intimidating. James and Sarah looked at him, astounded by his fury. James was visibly shaken. How is Emily doing? She got the papers last night, right? He asked, attempting to maintain control. Yes, she soon calmed down, but when she was fed, she became agitated again. She was unhappy, angry, and afraid, but she refused to tell what happened, Sarah stated, her voice full of concern. Good. I hope that now she'd remember every night, guys. I despise her for what she did, especially if she's in suffering, he spoke with finality. They were speechless by his outburst. Is there no way you can sort it out, Alex? Sarah implored, tears in her eyes. She made an error, but you two are fantastic together. Divorce is a significant step. Please speak to her first. She deserved it, Sarah's eyes expressed genuine concern. He paused, knowing he'd have to speak with Emily eventually. Okay, I will talk to her, but first, I want all of her belongings gone. It will be just she and me, and I'll call to let her know when and where, he said, stating his terms. Sarah gripped him fiercely, and James looked around. That is more than she can anticipate. Yes, Alex. Thank you, James stated, his voice honest. James gazed at him sullenly. My brother, Alex, is a creep. You should kick him. I would not blame you, he looked out the window as the pair drove away. They promptly got into their car and drove off towards his soon-to-be ex-wife. He sat back and studied Sarah's statements. Of course, I needed to talk to Emily, but I needed to calm myself before I trusted her. I kept her at arm's length and poured more coffee, savoring the bold flavor as it filled another enormous mug. He grabbed his phone and called Zadie, chatting with her for the next half hour. He listened to Zadie discuss how well she was doing without him. What a woman, he thought. After she finished, she began telling him about Emily. It felt like listening to his mother. She eventually summoned him to her home tonight for dinner with her and her hubby, and by the time he hung up, his ears were still ringing. He spent the remainder of the day rearranging locks, bedrooms, clothes, photos, and anything else that might be trashed, packed, or destroyed. His fury, while still blazing, had abated somewhat by the end of the day. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he was exhausted by the emotional torture. He realized he was probably walking away without speaking with Emily, but he had already chosen to dump her. Everything was ready, all that remained was to set up the ultimate showdown. He knew he'd be just as hurt as she was. God darn it, how could you do this to me, to us? He sat staring out the window, reflecting on how his marriage was crumbling. His heart ached, and only pain held his rage in check. He knew he should make the call, but as he sipped another JD, he decided to do so in the morning. He was too tired today to play a few hard rounds with her. He wanted to feel at ease when he did. He had another restless dream. The call came early again, just before 7 a.m. The phone rang, jolting his mind out of the half-dream he had fallen into. Alex, I'm James. Listen, I just received a call from the hospital. My brother has been there for several days now. He's been punched pretty badly. He appears to be stable, but he has taken a lot of punishment. His arms and legs are broken, and his balls are pretty well punched up. That is all I know. I hope you aren't expecting me to sympathize. Phil, in my opinion, is fortunate not to have met me. I would have completed the job, mark my words, if I ever meet him again. It won't be long, Alex replied coldly. Now I do, Alex. I understand, James said, his voice resigned. I won't blame you if you did so. James, it's not your fault. Remember that, Alex offered, trying to provide some comfort. Give my love to Sarah. Bye and thanks, sure. Bye, he added before hanging up. Alex stared out the window at the garden, which was peaceful, with the occasional bird flocking to the bird table and eating the food he put out. Sitting on the chaise lounge and watching nature through the glass always calmed him down and helped him think, and today was no exception. He called Lucas on his cell phone to give him the news about Ethan. Lucas only snorted but noted that the job was well done, his guys had done well, and got the result they needed. He laughed when Alex listed Ethan's injuries, serious enough but not life-threatening unless he did something stupid. Lucas said he could give him the appropriate message to behave, but I didn't think that was wise, Alex thought to himself. I was sure James would convey my feelings, which would be better and safer." They left it at that, and Alex went back to looking out the window as he sipped his second coffee of the day. The phone rang again, but he let it go to the answering machine. As he listened, he heard Emily's voice hesitantly leaving a message. "Alex, please call me. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. I need to explain. I need you. I need to come home. I'm so sorry," she sobbed between her pleas, each word punctuated by desperation. His heart sank as if it were being strangled in his chest. When the message ended, he found himself breathing heavily. He wanted to pick up the phone, but his hand wouldn't reach for it. Even the sound of her voice still bothered him. He knew he would have to do it today, but he wanted her to wait, so she wouldn't think he was answering her message right away. He wandered around the house for a couple more hours, and the house seemed empty and deserted. He looked around where Emily's things used to be, and they were voids. He called Katie and asked a couple of guys to come over with a van to move all her stuff. An hour later, the boxes and bags he had packed were stacked in the back of the van as he watched it pull away towards Emily. He knew that soon his phone would buzz as she picked up her stuff, and the realization that she had screwed up would hit hard. It was a one-way trip. The phone rang again. It was Sarah. "Alex, Emily's stuff has arrived. Just letting you know we've accepted it. The guys apparently dropped most of it off at the warehouse. Thanks for that, Alex. We only have the stuff you marked as personal." Emily is still in shock. "I know she called you earlier. Could you talk to her or call her later to put her mind at ease?" "Let's get this over with," Sarah said, his voice heavy with frustration. "I said my voice heavy with frustration." I waited a few seconds before I heard her voice. "Hello," came a frail voice to my ear. "Emily, my God, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "So you didn't think about the fact that you might get caught?" Alex spat venomously. "Alex, She started. "Leave it, Emily. Now you have the answer to all those questions you didn't even have to ask yourself all the time." "You were having fun with that low life," Alex interrupted, his anger boiling over. "Alex, can't we?" She tried again. "Do you really think you can tell me anything that will make everything okay? Well then, do your best." "I'm all ears," Alex said sarcastically. "Can I come home and talk to you, please?" she pleaded, desperation in her voice. "Why, Emily? To explain how sorry you are, to try and patch up the mess you created." "No. You stay precisely where you are. I'll let you know when and where we can talk, but you're not stepping foot in this house until I'm ready," he replied harshly. "Alex, I need to see you. I need to explain," she insisted. "You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy everything we had," he retorted. "I'll call you when I'm ready. Until then, don't try to contact me. Do you understand?" he said strongly. "Yes, Alex. I understand," she responded, her voice scarcely a whisper. "Goodbye, Emily," he said, disconnecting the call. He leaned back, feeling a mix of rage and relief. There was a long road ahead, but for now, he wanted to clear his thoughts and prepare for the next steps. He thought for a few seconds, attempting to regain control of his emotions. Her voice was bothering him, and he could feel his heart thumping out of his chest as if trying to break free. His breathing increased as his mind fought for control. Finally, taking a deep breath, he decided, "Tonight at 7 p.m., calm or not, it makes no difference to me. It's a one-time promotion that only lasts until 5 minutes after 7 p.m. I'll listen but won't promise anything." He heard her sigh at his impoliteness and ended the conversation. He sat there, listening to her voice, and could feel her pain. He wondered if she sensed his pain as well. He thought about his marriage and how happy he thought they were. Sure, they had their ups and downs, but he was confident they were content and hadn't had anyone else prior to that. Then he reflected on why he was so confident. Did he really know her? He hadn't suspected anything previously, but it didn't mean she hadn't done it before. He was bewildered again, trying to make sense of what he knew for certain and the black cloud towering over him, reflecting everything he didn't know for sure. The hallway clock chimed, and he knew it was past 6 o'clock. He listened to the bells, and they confirmed that it was 6:45. She, the woman, would arrive shortly, and he needed to calm his emotions and prepare for what would undoubtedly be the final act of his marriage. The doorbell interrupted his train of thinking and jolted him out of the self-pity fog he had slipped into. It crept up on him gradually as he tried not to worry too much about what lay ahead. He started asking himself questions over and over again. Why? Why now? Free of his gloomy thoughts, he took a step toward the door and swung it open. He saw Emily for the first time since that night in the motel. Her hair, while brushed and nice, was pushed back, giving her face a haggard appearance. Her face appeared paler due to the lack of makeup. Her shoulders appeared to drop and sag as she entered the lobby. He followed her and discovered that a few days may make a difference when you are taken off guard, as she was. He saw her gaze around the living room, gasping and then sobbing as she spotted the spaces on the walls and in the room where the photos and souvenirs had been. She gazed at him, her hand covering her mouth. "It's all gone," she said, tears in her eyes. He replied harshly, "If you look around the remainder of the house, you will notice that there are many vacant areas." He paused before saying anything else. She glanced at him again, tears running down her cheeks. "I hadn't realized, Alex. I didn't intend for that to happen." "I wasn't thinking," Emily admitted, her voice shaking with sadness. "I understand, but this is the effect of your infidelity. You're having extramarital affairs with another man. Everything is yours." "I hope you are satisfied," he responded, his words slashing through the air like knives. She sat down on the couch, and he served her a strong vodka and tonic. He handed it to her without emotion. She sipped the drink while glancing at him. He swirled the ice in his glass and took a big gulp. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her. "Okay, Emily, tell us what you have to say," he spoke in a chilly, disconnected tone. "I apologize, Alex. I couldn't help it. I went in over my head, and it became an addiction," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "Emily, just so you know, I spoke with Sarah and James, and they filled in the holes in my understanding. I know what, where, and who I'm dealing with." "I really don't know why," he explained, his voice rising with suppressed rage. "I am unable to answer that question. It was quite new and exciting. I fell for his nonsense," she confessed, appearing humiliated. "But did you have fun with him?" "Not once or twice but for weeks," he said, feeling his fury rise again. He took a sip and a few deep breaths, hoping to remain calm. She stared down at her feet. "I realized I can't excuse what I did, Alex. I was mistaken. Is there any way we can get through this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He skirted the question. "What about Ethan? Whatever happened to him? Where is the cretin?" he demanded. Emily fidgeted and eventually looked up at him, eyes locked on his. "We were apprehended in the motel that night. I believe there were 5 or 6 persons present, but Ethan had just been taken. He appeared for a brief moment and then vanished." "Did you set it up, Alex?" she asked, her voice trembling. He glanced back at her, drinking his drink and ignoring her inquiry. But he wondered if she recognized him that night before she passed out. It was dreadful. "They carried him away, and he vanished. Then they tied me up and put a weapon to my head. I know he pulled the trigger, but I lost consciousness at that point. I was frightened I would die," she described, her voice breaking. He watched as a shiver passed through her, his gaze fixed on hers. "So what happened with your lover?" he asked mockingly. "Alex, don't call him that. He is not my sweetheart. Yes, I know I made love with him, but I have no feelings for him. I love you and only you," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "You adore me so much that you've been having fun with this creep for weeks," he said, his anger boiling over. She leaned back on the couch in response to his sudden and furious outburst. So explain why I should give you the time of day when you've already proven yourself to be a liar and a cheat. How do I know that everything you say is true? How in the hell do you expect me to believe anything you say? Tell me, he demanded, his voice rising. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she realized the extent of his rage for the first time. So have you communicated with your lover? He asked again, emphasizing that he wanted to make her uncomfortable, to provoke her. I have, she looked at him through tears. I have not heard anything from him. I just know he's in a hospital somewhere, and that was all James said. I do not want to hear anything about him. He ruined my life. I wish he had died, she said, her voice filled with resentment. I couldn't agree more, he smirked, observing her face. She was furious at being apprehended and left to fend for herself. She had made a mistake, and she was now receiving the consequences. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching each other and waiting for the appropriate moment. He took his time, afraid of letting out his pent-up rage. He wanted to slap her but needed to maintain control. She looked around the living room for a distraction and sighed as she stared at the empty spot on the mantel where their wedding picture should have been. She raised her hand to her lips in response to her question, and she stood up and moved around the room, noting every empty space. He watched as she absorbed the missing memories. Every trace of her appeared to have vanished on the first floor. She sank back onto the sofa. Alex, everything is lost. Is there actually no chance? She looked at him, defeat in her eyes. He took a deep breath. Emily, I loved you like no one else. What you did ripped my heart out and stomped on it. Being with that idiot was disrespectful and showed complete disregard for my feelings and those of our friends. You were seen openly with him in public. You don't need to tell me it was just lovemaking or I didn't want to hurt you. You did it. Now you're going to pay the price. Your lover has already started to pay for what he did, and rightly so. I will cripple him, but slowly. I'll destroy you just like you destroyed what we had. Emily, we're done, finito. Now I'm sorry, I haven't heard anything from you to make me change my mind. So if you sign the divorce papers, we can move on with our lives. I don't want to see or hear from you anymore. I'm done with you now. Get out of my house, you cheating strumpet, he said, his words hitting her hard. She sat there in shock as his words hit her. She had really messed up, but right now, he didn't care about her. His anger would help him deal with her. She gathered herself and got up to leave. He followed her to the door when she opened her car door. She looked back at him and muttered, "Sorry." He raised his hand, mimicking a weapon, and watched the recognition creep into her face. Click, she shrieked and nearly collapsed as she climbed into the car. He closed the door behind her, and that was it. Their relationship had come to a bitter and irreversible end. Here is the next story. My wife, Emily, falsely accused me of cheating, but it backfired badly because it was her mother who exposed her affair to me. Now, my in-laws want to make me inherit $2 million while disowning her. My wife Emily, 27, and I, Thomas, 29, had been married for a year. But recently, I filed for a divorce after I found out that she had been cheating on me with one of her co-workers. Interestingly, it was actually my in-laws who exposed the affair to me and suggested that I file for a divorce as soon as I could. Emily is the single child of her millionaire parents who own a massive pharmaceutical company. We met on a dating app around 3 years ago and hit it off on our first date. After living together for 1 year, I decided to propose, and we got married soon after. Her parents, whom I'll refer to as Richard and Linda, were really cool people and always seemed to like me. In fact, Emily sometimes joked that I was the son that they never had, and it really felt that way because, from the first time I met them, they treated me like one of their own. They were very warm and kind people and did not have any airs about them, even though they were really wealthy. They were always very grounded and humble, and that's one of the things that I liked the most about these people. I personally don't have a very good relationship with my parents, and I grew up in a very emotionally disturbed household. My parents didn't love each other but didn't get divorced either because they thought they had to stay together for my sake. So, they would end up fighting almost every day, and neither were they happy together, nor was I. Neither of my parents was particularly affectionate, and even though I am still in touch with both of them now and they are still married, things are still the same way. Family dinners are almost always an obligation rather than something that any of us actively want to be a part of. But with Emily's family, it was all very different. I felt like I had found my own people, and I got very comfortable with them very quickly. So, I had always known that they liked me, but I never imagined that if it really came down to it, they would pick me over their own daughter. And that's where my dilemma is right now, because they want to make me the heir of their inheritance since Emily had been cheating on me, and they want to make up for it. I don't know whether to accept it or not because Emily is pretty furious about it, and at the end of the day, it is rightfully something that belongs to her, and I'm only getting it because she cheated on me, and her parents ratted her out. I'm emotionally devastated, but I still don't understand if it would be the right thing to do, and I certainly do want to take that money since it is $2 million. I had a lawyer evaluate everything and got to know that it's a pretty insane amount of money that I will be taking away from Emily if I accept my in-laws' offer, so I'm really confused about what to do right now. Emily and I have always had a very smooth and loving relationship. We would have small fights like any other couple, but we would always manage to work them out. So, when my in-laws invited me over to their house on my own and told me that they wanted to discuss something very important with me, I had no idea that they were going to tell me that Emily had apparently been cheating on me with a co-worker of hers. Emily worked for her dad's company and was in charge of recruitment. It was a family business, so it was easier for them to keep an eye on her, and they had noticed that she was spending an extraordinary amount of time with one of their newest recruits. What was really disgusting was the fact that the guy that had been having an affair with was much younger than her. He had just graduated from college and was barely 21. It was legal, but it was just so strange that she, in spite of being happily married, felt the need to look for love outside of her marriage. They had noticed the increasing closeness between the two of them and had even asked Emily about it just to keep them honest, but she reassured them that the two of them were just close friends and were getting along well. That was it. There was no fraternization happening. It was concerning for them as well because not only was it bad for our marriage, but it could possibly open them up to potential lawsuits as well because Emily was in a senior position compared to the guy that she was having that affair with, and if they happened to break up, he could very well use it against the company and sue them if he wanted to. So, my in-laws had asked her several times if there was anything that they should know about their relationship, but she told them that it was strictly professional and there was really nothing more to it. Unfortunately, as much as her parents wanted to believe her, it was impossible because, in spite of their repeated warnings about her friendship with that guy, she refused to back down and would even meet him outside of work. They didn't tell me about it at first because they didn't think it was their place to say anything. It was quite possible that this was a very innocent friendship. But soon enough, things got to a point where the parents felt that they had to intervene, so they did something and hired a private detective to go after her and keep an eye on her. They were pretty rich, so money was not a problem, and they managed to get a professional to do the job for them on sending a detective after Emily. They were able to find out that she had been visiting the other guy quite often after work hours. She would tell me that she was out with friends or that she was just at work, and I would trust her, but her parents told me that that was not the case. Every day, she would leave after her workday was over and head over to her partner's house, and then she would spend the next couple of hours there until she was ready to come back home. None of us were stupid. We knew that if she was lying to me, then there was definitely nothing innocent happening at his house. I was heartbroken when I found out because I really loved Emily, and I still do, somebody deep down, but getting to know that she had been cheating on me and had been lying to me for the past few months really broke my heart. This happened about a week and a half ago, and I still remember that meeting with my in-laws and how devastated I was following it. Even the two of them were very upset while they were letting me know about all of this, but they said that they knew Emily was never going to come and tell me the truth, so they thought that it would be better for them to tell me instead. At the time, they hadn't let Emily know that they knew the truth, and I had been the first person that they told. I broke down in front of them when they told me about it, and I was very lucky that they comforted me like they were my own parents. They told me that this was not my fault, that they had seen how I treated Emily like a queen, and this was all her fault. She just couldn't value the love that she had been given by her parents and me and threw it all away for a guy that she had barely even known for a year. I remember staying at their house that day because I just couldn't bring myself to go home and face Emily, and they were kind enough to let me spend the night at their place. I was quite disturbed, and I cried the entire night because I just didn't know what to do next. Logically, I realized that the next step would be to file for a divorce, but my heart wasn't ready to give up on her yet. So, the next morning, I decided to go back home before Emily left for work. I hadn't returned any of her calls or messages the previous night, so it was a bit of a surprise for her when I showed up in the morning, soon before she was ready to depart. I was plainly in a really poor situation, and she appeared concerned. But I sat her down, and I asked her about the affair since that was the most essential thing on my mind at the moment. She paused for a time and tried to deny it, but then I took out the images that her parents had shown me of her automobile parked outside of her coworker's house on the days that she had told me she was working late. She tried to convince me that they were just friends and they were hanging out, but then there was no reason for her to lie about it. So, she finally had to come out and tell the truth that she had been cheating on me with him. The second that she told me that it was real, she had been having an affair, I broke down once again, and this time it was even worse than before since when it was only her parents saying it, I still had some hope, and I was praying that it would not be real, and maybe it was just a misunderstanding of some sort. But once Emily said it, there was no way I could dispute it, and I had to realize that she had indeed been cheating on me. I was hysterical, and I can't remember what I said to her. All I remember is a lot of yelling and shouting. She had also begun to cry, attempting to convince me that she was being silly and had lost sight of what was important since she was bored in her marriage. But she never expected me to find out because it was only a fling and meant nothing to her, and that made matters worse because it meant nothing to her. There was no reason for her to do it anyway. The thought that she had damaged our marriage because she was bored bothered me. I recalled ranting at her about how I had trusted her and always been there for her, but she had thrown everything away for a boy she hardly knew. And I believe I yelled at her till she broke down in tears. Things became so terrible that she was on the floor, wailing with her head in her hands, and I was screaming at her from above. It was a complete disaster, and just thinking about it made me quite uncomfortable about how both of us had been acting, which was not usual. Nothing about it seemed normal. But after that incident, I told her that I was finished with her and wanted her out of the house. She tried to inform me that she was going to break up with the other guy the day itself and that she simply wanted me to give our marriage another opportunity. But I informed her that as long as she was here, I couldn't think about anything but her affair, and I needed time to contemplate. So, until then, I wanted her to leave the house. There were numerous disagreements since she urged that we be together and work things out, it would be the right thing to do. But at the time, I was still battling to accept the reality that she had cheated on me. So, it was up to me to decide whether to work things out or leave her. First, I needed time to comprehend everything that had transpired, which required her to be away from me. I didn't want to breathe the same air as her because I was horrified by what she had done, and I despised and disliked her so much that I couldn't be around her. But she continued to refuse to leave, so I became really irritated and informed her that I would leave instead since I couldn't tolerate being around her any longer. She was still unhappy and said I couldn't go because she wanted to work things out and stay married to me because it had all been a mistake, and I couldn't leave her over something like this. But I didn't even respond, just left. I didn't bother packing anything and began driving aimlessly because I had no idea where I was heading. It wasn't until I was running low on gas that I realized I needed to spend the night somewhere, so I began driving towards the nearest motel. At that moment, I've stayed there ever since. Things haven't been great between Emily and me since then, and as much as I've tried to forget what she did and forgive her, I can't. So, last week, I officially filed for divorce after considering it for 3 days, despite Emily's attempts to contact me. I hadn't spoken with her since I left the house that day. The reality is, I don't have anything else to say to her since what she did is something I'll never forgive or forget. However, my in-laws have stayed in touch with me and have texted me every day to ensure that I am doing well. I've also contacted them since when I told my parents and asked for assistance, they were unhelpful. They just told me that they were sorry about everything and that I should always do what I believe is right, which is such trite and ridiculous advice. So, talking to them wasn't going to help, and I knew they didn't try to console me or anything. So, I started communicating with my in-laws. I haven't told any of my pals yet, but I don't require any emotional support, which is why I've been speaking with them. Most people would find that strange, but I'm very close to them and don't believe it's improper. After I filed for divorce and the coal was served, she began texting me more regularly, but I hadn't opened or read any of her chats. I'd also muted all of her notifications, so it didn't disturb me. But that didn't mean I forgot what had happened. I'd still moved on, and everything stung. To make matters worse, I was having a difficult time at work because I had to take an unexplained leave of absence because I couldn't necessarily attend to work every day now that I was living in a hotel in the middle of nowhere. The commute would be simply too long. I was almost out of paid leave when my employer phoned me a few days ago to inform me that if I did not show up to work within the following few days, I would be terminated. This freaked me out even more because I had a lot of huge bills ahead of me due to the high cost of divorce, and I also had to start looking for new everything from residences to employment. I've been casually discussing all of this with my in-laws. I didn't expect them to help, but after I told them everything, they said that because Emily had forced me into a corner, they would repair it for me. I had no idea what they were planning to do, but a few hours later, they informed me I needed to come to their house right away because Emily was there, and they wanted us to hash it out. I didn't have to talk about the divorce, but we could at least decide who would live in the house because Emily could still live with them, but I needed my own place so I could continue to work. I was apprehensive at first because I didn't want to talk to Emily, but my in-laws persuaded me to come over and give it a go because they didn't want me to lose my job as a result of this. So, I finally consented and headed over to their apartment. I was naturally apprehensive because I hadn't seen Emily in a long time, but I didn't want to show it, so I said nothing for the first several minutes I was in the room. We both avoided looking at each other, and we didn't have much to say until my in-laws started chatting. My in-laws offered that I take over the house because Emily could live with them, and they all worked in the same location, so it wouldn't be an issue. However, if I don't obtain the house, I risk losing my career. And then something strange occurred. Emily began to complain that she didn't understand why she had to make such sacrifices when it was my fault that we were getting divorced. She informed her parents that they should support her instead of standing with a cheater. She admitted that she knew and recognized that they liked me, but this was going too far. None of us understood what she was saying, so we just stared at her, waiting for her to explain. Her tone was furious and full of conviction, so I began to believe that she might have something to say this time and that it might make sense. Unfortunately, she began saying total nonsense, and I immediately realized that she was just trying to make me appear terrible in front of her parents so that they would no longer support me. And she was actually lying about me right in front of me. So, Emily had no idea that her parents had told me about the affair, so she probably assumed I had sent a detective after her to retrieve the images myself. She had no idea her parents were involved, so she began fabricating stories about me having an affair with a mutual acquaintance. She remarked that she had noticed how the two of us always appeared to be extremely cozy when we were all together, and that she had even edited some images and brought out photos that made it appear as if I was hanging out with my friend and doing romantic things with her, such as having dinner. She claimed that she only had her own affair because she found out about us and was hurt, and that her co-worker had been hitting on her for a long time, so she simply agreed to go out with him as a way to get revenge on me and get things off her mind. But now that everything was out in the open, she told her parents that she expected them to kick me out of the house and cut me off forever. She told them that she didn't appreciate their relationship with me and wanted it to end because she was certain that I was the one who had asked them to get involved, even now, or even told them about the divorce in the first place and had manipulated them to believe me instead of her, portraying myself as the victim, and had asked them to arrange this meeting between us. I knew she was screwed at that point because she had dug herself a hole that she couldn't get out of by fabricating a story to expose me and regain her parents' support, which was probably the worst move she could have made given the circumstances. And predictably, her mother began yelling at her almost immediately, saying she couldn't believe she had thought we would always be stupid enough to believe her lies and poorly edited photos. Emily was taken aback by the reaction, it was obviously not what she expected. Her parents explained that they had expected her to be honest, at the very least, after she had been caught. But they must have made a mistake while raising her, because she has turned into a horrible lying cheat. Then came the big reveal. My in-laws finally admitted to her that they had told me about the affair and handed me the photos. There was no point in lying to them or trying to save face, because everyone knew the truth. And Emily's face was definitely worth seeing at that moment. Then they got into a huge fight, which was unavoidable because Emily felt betrayed and stated that she despised the fact that they always treated me like their own son while willing to sell out their own daughter for my sake. Her parents were understandably upset that she turned out the way she did. They also called her stupid for not realizing they were the ones who had told me about the affair, despite the fact that they had previously confronted her about it and asked her several times if she was having an affair with that co-worker. She told them that she had considered the possibility that they had told me, but it seemed absurd because, at the end of the day, they were her parents, and she expected them to be loyal regardless of what she did. So they argued for a while, and then she stormed out, saying she didn't want to speak to any of us because she was tired of everyone and upset. I felt bad for her because I could understand how it would hurt not to have your own parents on your side. But after things had calmed down a little, my in-laws informed me that they had made up their minds and that they were going to change the will, making me the sole heir to their inheritance because Emily clearly did not deserve it. They wanted me to have it because they believed it was more appropriate. It was a big move, and I felt awkward taking money from them. It would also be a significant amount as I would be essentially taking it away from Emily. So, I told them I needed some time to think about it because this was a big deal, and I couldn't just say yes and move on. There would be consequences to this, and I wanted to consider everything before deciding what to do. So, I explained that I wanted to take my time and think about it before saying anything, and they agreed. They told me I had plenty of time to think about it, but it's been days, and I'm still not sure if it's the moral and ethical thing to do. I understand that Emily ruined our marriage by cheating on me, but the amount I'm going to inherit and take away from her is significant, and I'm not sure whether it's fair or not. I've been thinking about it, and I'm at a loss right now. That is why I am here. So, what if I agreed to take away my cheating soon-to-be ex-wife's inheritance worth millions of dollars? Update 1. Thank you so much for all of your valuable feedback and support. I'm doing well emotionally by God's grace, and I've been discussing it with my friends. They believe I should accept the money because Emily's actions against me were wrong, and if her parents want to fix things by making me the heir to their estate, I should just let them because I deserve it. They also reminded me that Emily not only cheated on me but also attempted to make it appear as if I had been cheating first with all those pictures and so on. Her parents might have believed her if they hadn't known the truth. So, when it was clear that she would go to any length to absolve herself of any blame, I don't have to be gentle with her either. And I believe that is a fair assessment of her character. I've made up my mind. I don't think I should reject the inheritance because she didn't care about my feelings when she was cheating on me and destroying our marriage for a guy she'd only known for a few months. So, there was absolutely no reason for me to overthink what I was doing. Update 2. So, I finally got back in touch with my in-laws today and told them I was willing to accept their terms, and they seemed pleased. They told me that they were glad they had this opportunity to make things right with me because Emily's actions had been extremely wrong. They told me that after the fight at their house the other day, she stopped speaking with them, and I blocked them everywhere. She'd also given her 2-week notice and stopped coming to work on that day, and so had her partner. I was surprised that she was willing to give up her job as well because, as far as I knew, my father-in-law was grooming her to take over after he retired. So now, he'd have to find someone else to take over. It was crazy because I knew how much she loved her job, but she was willing to give it all up because she believed she did not deserve to be called out for her actions. I could hear the disappointment in my father-in-law's voice as he told me about it because Emily had undoubtedly screwed everything up for herself. But she remained their daughter and only child. It fascinated me that my in-laws valued doing the right thing and having a spine over pandering to their child's wishes, and I've got to say that very few parents in the world will be able to do so while sacrificing their relationship with their only child. I tried to console them, but saying things didn't seem enough, so I decided to pay them a visit tomorrow and spend some time with them because I know they are lonely and hurt as a result of everything that has happened. Update 3. Hey, it's been a few weeks since I left my residence, and I've been staying in a motel since then. Unfortunately, I was sacked from my work, but the good news is that my father-in-law spoke with a friend of his and found me a far better job at his friend's company, so I assume everything is fine. The divorce processes have begun, and things are pretty tense when Emily and I meet with a mediator. It is difficult for me to avoid her, but I need to. I know she's already begun seeing the other guy and has even moved in with him. From what I've heard, I'm not shocked, but I'm a little sad because I expected her to take a little longer to truly move on from me after all we'd been together for a long time. But that obviously means nothing to her. I'm going to strive to make sure it means nothing to me too now. However, things with my in-laws are going well. We don't talk to Emily anymore, and neither does her family. We try not to bring her up at all because it is a delicate matter for all of us. It's sad, but at least we're a family now. They have not yet modified their will, but they intend to do so after the divorce is finalized and will ensure that Emily is unaware of it until after they are gone. We try to meet together as often as possible because we know we're all going through the same thing and can only be there for each other while hoping things would improve over time. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.